and sunny, but the clouds bubbling up this afternoon. We will see a few showers, maybe for Wales, certainly across Northern Ireland, perhaps southwest Scotland too. Feeling quite warm, though, a bit warmer than yesterday in the south, 23, 24, perhaps even up to 25 Celsius. Again, some of these North Sea coasts will be a little fresher, and certainly temperature will drop down where we see these heavy showers breaking out, which could easily affect parts of southern and western Northern Ireland. The far north of Scotland, always the possibility of the Ha returning here. Small chance of a shower over southwest Scotland, northwest England, but a greater risk of those showers for Northern Ireland, where there could be slow-moving thunderstorms. So just something to keep an eye on here through the day. Small chance of a shower too for Wales, perhaps even the Midlands, but most places across England and Wales dry and fine. It'll start to cloud over in the southwest a little bit as we go through the afternoon into the evening, so sunshine turning hazy, and then that cloud thickening up. We're more likely to see some rain coming into South Wales, southwest England as we go through the early hours. Elsewhere, a dry night to come. Again, that mist and low cloud just drifting back inland over parts of eastern Scotland and eastern England. Bit of a chilly one over Scotland. Temperatures well down into single figures here. Different feel, though, tomorrow for South Wales, southwest England. More cloud and some outbreaks of rain. And we could see some heavy showers even developing over southeast England and the Midlands. Could be some welcome rain, but if you get a heavy downpour, it's going to drop a lot of rain in a short space of time. Those heavy downpours will be very hit and miss. Many places, again, dry and fine. A drier day for Northern Ireland. Again, cool on some North Sea coasts. High teens, low 20s elsewhere.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
What does it feel like to be a Great British Giveaway winner?
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God, I'm going to cry.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
Yes, that is fantastic.
You know, you have no idea how much I needed it. Oh my goodness.
That's wonderful. Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I was gobsmacked. Thank you, GBNews.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
You really could be our next big winner. Head over to gbnews.com/win now to find out how and get your entry for the Great British Giveaway. Great prizes, even greater wins.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon, Britain, to you. It's just coming up to 12 o'clock on Tuesday, the 20th of May. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Miriam Cates.
Now, Lucy Connolly, the Northampton childminder jailed for inciting racial hatred over a social media post, has lost her appeal to reduce her 2.5-year sentence. We'll be live outside the court with the very latest.
And a second man has been charged in a suspected arson plot targeting properties linked to Sir Keir Starmer. Counter-terror police are leading the investigation and will be speaking to our reporter live outside court.
Stanislav Karpiuk is the second Ukrainian to face these firebomb charges. He spoke through a Russian interpreter in court. He's now been remanded back in custody.
Elsewhere, the Prime Minister's EU reset deal is igniting political firestorms. While Sir Keir Starmer hails it as a win-win, critics argue it's a Brexit backslide. What does this mean for Britain's sovereignty and our economy? We'll delve into the implications.
And a major shift on the rock. Gibraltar is edging closer to joining the Schengen zone, keeping its border with Spain open. But is Britain giving too much away? Well, we've got the latest on the deal and the pressure now facing Sir Keir Starmer.
The Chief Minister here in Gibraltar tells me at GBNews this morning that they are excruciatingly close to a deal. But what could it mean? We've been getting the reaction here in Gibraltar in this glorious sunshine.
And could weight loss jabs be the key to reducing Britain's benefits bill? Well, Tony Blair's think tank proposes a radical plan to send anti-obesity injections by post to millions, aiming to cut NHS costs and boosts the economy. But will it work? Well, there's a busy show today. There's a lot to cover. And, of course, we're going to be live in the House of Commons in less than half an hour's time now, where, for the first time in front of politicians, the Prime Minister will have to defend the deal that he reached with the European Union.
When we were reading the headlines there, I was struck by just how much pressure there is on the Prime Minister, home and abroad at the moment. The Brexit deal, the winter fuel allowance, accusations over lack of free speech.
Yes.
People are placing an awful lot on his shoulders, where I kind of think in previous governments it was more spread around the Cabinet. We're not hearing much about the Cabinet Ministers who are supposedly in charge of these briefs.
Yeah, gone is the time of the sort of big beasts of the 1970s, where you had sort of giant figures in politics. I mean, who are the giant figures in the Cabinet today, really? I mean, maybe one or two of them. But I think this all ties into a new poll that has come out today, again putting the Reform Party in first place, quite a way ahead of the Labour Party, and it has the Conservative Party in fourth place. This the new YouGov poll.
16%.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems catastrophic. It's extraordinary. And also, we know that it's true or roughly true because the local elections were just a few weeks ago and the polling was borne out in the actual elections. You never quite know whether these polls are going to become reality, but it did a few weeks ago, so very interesting.
And I think this is also one of the things, I mean, the Prime Minister held a parliamentary Labour Party meeting in Parliament last night, which apparently was a pretty rough time for him. Some MPs left early, and clearly, I think there's some jitters now amongst the Labour parliamentary party, because before they could just dismiss the polls as, oh, these are just the polls. But now we've had real elections. We've had a by-election, we've had mayoral elections, we've had local elections that shows that the polls aren't fictitious, they're real.
And learning from the last Parliament, when the polls sink, it's very difficult to get them up again, in my experience.
No, personal experience.
Personal experience, my lived experience. Well, do send your views and comments on everything we're going to be discussing today. Visit gbnews.com/your say. But first, your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom. The top story this lunchtime, well, it is breaking news that a UK-based people smuggler who ran a £12 million illegal boat crossing operation has been jailed today for 25 years. 42-year-old Ahmed Ibid helped move nearly 3,800 migrants from North Africa to Italy, some ending up here in Britain. While he was living in southwest London, he even told an associate to kill any migrants caught support with phones in order to avoid law enforcement. That is according to the National Crime Agency. Abid is believed to be the first UK-based organiser of Mediterranean crossings, admitting conspiracy to assist unlawful immigration. A judge today calling the profits made during that operation truly staggering and said that the 42-year-old ruthlessly exploited the hard-earned savings of desperate individuals attempting to make that crossing. So that news just into us in the last hour or so. A UK-based people smuggler running £12 million illegal boat crossing operation, jailed today for 25 years. Also breaking today, the wife of a former Conservative councillor has lost her bid to cut her jail sentence for an online rant about migrants posted on the day of the Southport attacks. Lucy Connolly was jailed for 31 months after calling for asylum hotels to be, quote, set on fire in a post viewed over 300,000 times before being deleted. She claimed in court she was grieving and never meant to incite violence, but judges rejected that appeal. They said her version of events didn't justify reducing the sentence. Connolly had pleaded guilty to inciting racial hatred after more racist messages were found on her phone. In other news, Tommy Robinson is due to be released from prison within a week after his 18-month sentence for contempt of court was cut by 4 months. He was jailed last year for breaching an injunction that barred him from repeating false claims about a Syrian refugee who had successfully sued him for libel. At a High Court hearing this morning, lawyers had argued Robinson had shown a commitment to comply with the order. And while the judge said there was no contrition or remorse, he did accept Robinson had shown a, quote, change in attitude. Robinson, real name Stephen Yaxley-Lennon, attended that hearing today via video link from HMP Woodhill. And also breaking today, a second man has appeared in court over firebomb attacks on properties linked to the Prime Minister. 26-year-old Stanislav Karpic was arrested at Luton Airport and charged with conspiring to cause damage by fire, alongside another Ukrainian man. The attacks targeted homes in Islington and in Kentish Town in London, including one that Sir Keir Starmer lived in before becoming Prime Minister. Karpic appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court today and was remanded in custody, and he's set to appear at the Old Bailey on the 6th of June. The Prime Minister says a new trade deal with the EU marks a new era in UK relations with Europe, calling it good for bills, good for jobs and good for borders. That deal will see Brits use EU passport e-gates once again, farmers face fewer export checks and young people access a new youth experience scheme. British burgers and sausages will also return to the EU market, and UK steel exports will dodge £25 million in tariffs. But backlash is growing over a 12-year extension for EU fishing in UK waters, with Reform UK warning of the end of the fishing industry. Well, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Dame Priti Patel, claims Labour has been betrayed by Britain. Britain has rather been betrayed by... Let's take a listen to what she has to say.
Keir Starmer never believed in Brexit. He spent all his time campaigning to unpick Brexit. He was being dishonest with the British public. He basically did not go into the general election last year and say that his reset would mean that we'd become a rule taker all over again and under the European Court of Justice, which is effectively what has happened. He deceived the British public. He never said that we'd end up paying the EU, and that's what we are doing again.
Dame Priti Patel there speaking earlier. Donald Trump claims both Ukraine and Russia want to end the war and says peace talks will start immediately. It follows a 2-hour phone call with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, which Donald Trump described as going very well. But he's warned the US will walk away from negotiations if there's no progress. Donald Trump didn't reveal any details of the discussions, though, and the Kremlin hasn't commented so far. The UN's humanitarian chief is warning 14,000 babies could die in Gaza within just 48 hours without urgent aid. Tom Fletcher says just 5 lorries have entered after Israel lifted its 11-week blockade. But none have reached people yet. Israeli airstrikes have killed overnight at least 38 Palestinians in just 30 minutes, according to local reports. That comes as the UK, France and Canada have urged Israel to halt its renewed offensive and get more aid in. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the war can end tomorrow if Hamas releases its hostages. 58 remain in Gaza, with up to 23 thought to still be alive. And a major UK food distributor is being held to ransom by cyber hackers, disrupting supplies to Tesco, Sainsbury's, Lidl and Aldi. Peter Green Chilled says it's suffering a ransomware attack, halting orders and threatening thousands of products with waste. One supplier says the clock is ticking as meat pallets risk being banned. Well, scientists in the US have started building a vast underground detector they hope could answer one of the universe's biggest mysteries. The neutrino experiment is being constructed nearly a mile beneath the Earth's surface. Researchers say it could help explain why the universe exists in its current form. Well, current theories of astronomy still can't quite account for how stars, planets and galaxies came to be, but it's hoped the project will shed light on forces that shaped the cosmos. Those are the latest headlines for now. More in half an hour. Now it's over to Miriam and Tom.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 11 past midday. Now, a second man has been charged with arson over fires at properties linked to the Prime Minister.
Yes, the 26-year-old Ukrainian-born Romanian national is accused of arson with intent to endanger life, according to the Metropolitan Police.
Well, let's go to Westminster Magistrates Court and speak to our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who has the very latest. Mark, this is now the second man charged.
Yes, indeed. Stanislav Karpiuk was brought here to Westminster Magistrates Court in an unmarked police van under police escort. And as you say, the second Ukrainian now to appear in connection with these alleged firebomb attacks. The first being Roman Lasanovich, who appeared here on Friday, and they relate to firebomb attacks that took place at the family home of Sir Keir Starmer in Kentish Town on the 12th of May. A fire that was confined to the entrance of that building and quickly dealt with by firefighters. No one was injured. 4 days previous to that, a car that was once owned by Sir Keir Starmer but then sold to a neighbour at this same address in Kentish Town was set ablaze as well. And then just a day before the fire at the Kentish Town address, another property which was once owned by Sir Keir Starmer some two decades ago was also firebombed, and that fire again confined to the entrance area of that property. One person inside that property had to be rescued by firefighters wearing breathing apparatus. So this individual, Mr. Karpiuk, appeared in the glass-fronted dock here. He spoke through a Russian interpreter. He is a Romanian national but was born in Ukraine. According to the court, he is someone who is resident in Romford in East London and works in construction. The charges were put to him. He was remanded back into custody and he will appear alongside his co-accused at the Central Criminal Court, the Old Bailey, on the 6th of June.
Do we have any idea of the motive or any significance behind the nationality of those accused?
Well, we've been told nothing about the significance of the nationality or indeed the motivation, except that those prosecutors, in conjunction with the police, the CPS, will make a decision by the time it gets to the Central Criminal Court whether this is a case that falls under terrorism legislation and should go forward on that basis. But no indication as yet that that is the avenue that they are proceeding down, just that by the time it is at the Old Bailey we should have a decision.
OK, and Mark, while we have you, we're hearing that a UK-based people smuggler who helped exploit migrants as part of a £12 million illegal boat crossing operation has now been jailed for a quarter of a century. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, this is a very significant story, a very significant people smuggler, a mastermind, we're told, of an organised criminal group that was involved in people smuggling further out, up country, if you like, from Africa across the Mediterranean to the Italian islands of Lampedusa and other Italian islands, with a view to smuggling thousands of migrants across the Mediterranean. Include this man, Ahmed Abid, we're told was responsible for smuggling almost 4,000 migrants across the Mediterranean between 2022 and 2023, using dilapidated old fishing boats that were clearly very unsafe for what is a very significant journey across the Mediterranean from North Africa. He was charging, his organised crime group were charging over £3,000 for each person per journey across the Mediterranean, and today he has been jailed now, very significant jail term of 25 years, a minimum term that he must serve in prison. Now, after that sentence was passed, we heard from the Crown Prosecution Service, Tim Burton, who's the specialist prosecutor at the CPS. He said Ahmed Abid played a leading role in a sophisticated operation which breached immigration laws and endangered lives for his own and others' financial gain. Vulnerable people were transported on long sea journeys in ill-equipped fishing vessels, completely unsuitable for carrying the large numbers of passengers who were on board. His repeated involvement in helping to facilitate these dangerous crossings showed a complete disregard for the safety of thousands of people whose lives were put at serious risk. And the reason this is important for people thinking, well, this is the Mediterranean, nothing to do with us. This is part of the journey that these migrants who eventually end up on the northern shores of France with a view to getting across the English Channel make as part of that journey.
The first leg. Well, Mark White, thanks indeed for bringing us both of those stories. They're live outside Westminster Magistrates Court.
Well, moving on now, and in the last hour, Lucy Connolly has failed in her appeal against her sentence for inciting racial hatred.
Yes, this is the wife of a former Conservative councillor who was jailed for 31 months in October after calling for mass deportations and for migrant hotels to be burnt down for all she cares in the wake of the Southport attacks last summer, when 3 girls were, of course, murdered at a Taylor Swift-themed dance party.
Well, let's go live to the Royal Courts of Justice and speak to GB News reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, thank you for joining us. Huge support for Lucy Connolly over recent weeks in the press and amongst the public. Was this the result that was expected?
Absolutely not, and I'm told that Lucy Connolly was hopeful but anxious about today's appeal judgment, and she will remain behind bars. I'll just read a statement from the judges released in the last hour. There is no arguable basis on which it could be said that the sentence imposed by the judge was manifestly excessive. The application for leave to appeal against sentence therefore fails and is refused. Lord Justice Holroyd goes on to say that her appeal was substantially based on a version of events put forward by her, and therefore that informed their judgment today. Now, Ray Connolly, the husband of Lucy Connolly, he himself is a former Conservative councillor, like you said, Tom. He said he is heartbroken by today's result, and he adds that my wife has paid a very high price for making a mistake, and today the court has shown her no mercy. Now, the extraordinary thing about this is I was in a briefing last week in Downing Street in which the Justice Secretary and the interim permanent Secretary of the Justice Department held up graphs saying that the prison capacity is a breaking point. We have a prison crisis. That's the government's own view on this. They will therefore have to release even some violent offenders early. We saw that last year as well. Yet Lucy Connolly will nonetheless remain behind bars. My colleague Christopher Hope, he will be in a briefing actually now speaking to the Downing Street official spokesman. It'll be very interesting to see what their view is on this judgment, because it is quite extraordinary.
So Excellent stuff. Well, Adam Cherry, thanks indeed for joining us there. We're going to now speak to Toby Young, the founder and director of the Free Speech Union, for reaction here. Because, Toby, this is an extraordinary case. Just to reiterate, the tweet that Lucy Connolly sent said, "Set fire to all the hotels full of the," well, I can't say that word, "for all I care. While you're at it, take the treacherous in government and politicians with them." I mean, to me, that doesn't sound like incitement, but clearly the court disagrees.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like incitement to me either, Tom. The reason Lucy got such a harsh sentence is because she pleaded guilty to intending to incite serious violence. And part of the case that her barrister, paid for by the Free Speech Union, made in the Court of Appeal last week is that she pleaded guilty to that without knowing what the implications would be from a sentencing point of view, and that she wasn't properly informed by her solicitor. Now, the Court of Appeal have rejected that argument. Another argument that her barrister, Adam King, made is that the judge should have taken various mitigating circumstances into account. For instance, one of the reasons she was so traumatized when she learnt of the murder of the 3 girls in Southport is because she herself had lost a 19-month-old son due to a mistake by the NHS. So she felt it particularly acutely and felt particularly angry about what had happened, wrongly blamed it on an asylum seeker, like many people did, because there was a vacuum of information at the time. But she also deleted the tweet, I think as you've said, just about 3 hours after she'd posted it, and she apologized for posting it, and she subsequently posted tweets discouraging people from rioting. And none of that was taken into account by the judge, who gave her more than 2.5 years, 31 months. And what's so extraordinary about that sentence is that people convicted of participating in child sexual exploitation, members of rape gangs, have received lower sentences. There was a case in 2013 in Telford in which 7 men pleaded guilty to various grooming gang offences, one of which was having sex with a child prostitute, and 4 of the 7 people convicted in that case received a lower sentence than Lucy Connolly did. And you have to ask, what world do we live in which raping a child gets you a lower prison sentence than a single tweet, however offensive some people might find that tweet?
Absolutely. And I think, Toby, whatever the letter of the law, it will deeply offend people's sense of natural justice, the different types of sentences. Toby, I'm so sorry, we are going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us, Toby Young there.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come. We're going to be live in Gibraltar, as that part of this country's overseas territories inches closer to joining the EU's free border Schengen zone. So what does this all mean for the UK's control post-Brexit? And we'll unpack that political pressure facing the Prime Minister.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It is cruel because I think children are only your children for 16 years, 18 years, right? And then they go and they have to do all this stuff for themselves. I think while they're young, their main priorities should be their education, coming in, doing their homework, getting to bed, getting enough sleep. My children, for example, are 11 and 16, so one's doing his GCSEs, the other still randomly has a ton of homework, even 11. By the time they've come in and done their homework, they're exhausted and they go to bed. I just don't think it is my job as a parent to tell them to then go and mop the floor or hoover their bedrooms. Their main focus is their education at this age.
Yeah. You made my blood run cold there talking about homework, because I'm not a believer in homework. I think school is where you do work and then you come home, and home is where you can do anything else that you want to do. But I just think it's just all too much.
I think this is a tricky one because we're not talking about Victorian Britain or sending children up chimneys. We're talking making your bed, tidying your room. I think it's a great help for people to do chores around the house. There's been several studies where they've seen that it's had beneficial well-being for children. And I think it's just about learning about time management, confidence, resilience. These are just basic life skills. So many people these days, teenagers, grow up and they don't have them, and then they're going off to university or whatever. I saw a really funny video actually of a mum who couldn't get her child to clean up, so she got black rice, sprinkled it around the room and told him it was mouse droppings. Now, I don't know if we need to go that far, but I do think it's good for children as a whole.
GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 26 minutes past 12 and Gibraltar's chief minister has said that a deal between the UK and the EU on the ROC's post-Brexit status is excruciatingly close. I think he said it's within kissing distance.
Kissing?
Blimey. Very Spanish.
Very Spanish indeed. Unless you're a Spanish football
in which case kissing is not advised.
Absolutely not. You'll end up in prison. But the deal would reportedly see Gibraltar join the Schengen zone, that big free movement area within Europe, and keep its border open with Spain.
Well, this comes a day after the British government concluded a so-called reset deal with the EU.
Well, let's go live to Gibraltar now and speak to our very own reporter, Jack Carson, who's very lucky indeed to have been flown out there to what I imagine is a very sunny Gibraltar. Jack, how's it going?
It is absolutely beautiful here in Gibraltar. We are in an old-fashioned British telephone box. Of course, the British overseas territory, and since the UK left the European Union, and there's been a transitional period at the border between Gibraltar and Spain. And the Spanish Foreign Minister saying recently that in order for the UK and the EU to have a full relationship going forward, there would have to be some kind of agreement on Gibraltar. And of course, we spoke to Picardo, the Chief Minister here in Gibraltar, a little bit earlier on. He told us around how close a deal on Gibraltar would be, but let's get some reaction now with Together Gibraltar. Tell me, Nick, what is the feeling around this agreement from your perspective? It says it's excruciatingly close. How do you feel about that?
First of all, thanks for having me, Jack. And I think the first impression from our party is probably relief. You've heard today already from the Chief Minister about the economic impact of Brexit and why we need this deal. But there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot of the staff that the Chief Minister mentioned are core staff, healthcare staff, people who care for the elderly, who support our local businesses. And so it's vitally important to Gibraltar to maintain that fluidity of movement. There's also the cultural factor, the fact that many of us have families over in Spain who we were worried we might not be able to see as easily. So getting back some of those core freedoms that we lost with Brexit is, I think, a sign of relief that we're hopefully coming close to getting those back.
And it's fluidity, but not freedom of movement. Just why is an agreement important? And with this agreement and with it being so close, what do you not want to see in it? What for you would be a red line that should not be crossed when it comes to this agreement?
Yeah, so just like the government, we believe that sovereignty is an absolute red line, and we're grateful that that has been protected by both the Gibraltar government, obviously, but the British government has always made the stance that Gibraltar would have to be in the room and that we are consulted on every decision. Obviously, we have to be very careful, having Spain as a neighbour. We've been through some hard times. In 2013, for example, they made the border very difficult and it became almost impossible to cross. But we've actually been quite fortunate that the current Spanish government are more in favour of European integration, and they see extending an olive branch to Gibraltar as a way of being the good guys, as it were. So we're hopeful that we can come to a good agreement with them and the UK as partners.
You mentioned there, being able to cross the border. Just explain for us, for people that don't live here in Gibraltar, have maybe never visited, what is the daily life like with trying to cross that border? Because we've heard from some people that have told us that it can be quite antagonistic at times from Spain.
It can, and I think something that British people might not realise is that UK citizens are actually the most affected by this. So my partner's from the UK, and because she's not a Gibraltarian native, she has to get her passport stamped every time going over, and you can imagine that can create a lot of delays and gives border guards the opportunities to, when they want to tighten the screws, really slow down Gibraltar's fluidity, ability to get workers in, ability to have our economy running. And so it's both a freedom that's been lost to travel freely to, we used to go to Spain just to go to the supermarket because of the cost of living. A lot of goods there are cheaper, and that's something that was taken away from us when it used to be that you could just cross over for a drink, cross over to go to the supermarket, and now many times you have to actually have a specific reason for travel or book a hotel room just to cross the border and get a drink.
Right, Nick Calamari from Together Gibraltar, thank you so much for joining us and giving his perspective as to why an agreement for him is so important. Of course, excruciatingly close, that's what we have been told, and that would include Gibraltar, we think, joining the Schengen zone.
OK, well, Jack Carson, thanks indeed for joining us there live from a very sunny Gibraltar. Now, we should say that we're waiting for the Prime Minister to get onto his feet in the House of Commons, and we'll go to that as soon as he does. But in the meantime, of course, that EU deal is supposed to boost the economy by £9 billion. The Prime Minister claims it will restore Britain's global standing.
But with EU boats granted access to British waters for 12 more years, is this going to be a major blow to British fishermen?
And of course, it's not just the fish. There are also huge concerns over other elements of the economy, accepting all EU rules on agriculture, on our food, on what we grow, on agri-food as well, and animals. What will that mean for the freedom of our own farmers on the land too, if we have to sign up to whatever the EU decides in perpetuity?
Yes, exactly. And we're now no longer members of the EU, so we have absolutely no control over those laws, how they're made, how they're implemented, but we have to agree to them. It does seem an astonishing deal. I'm not quite sure what the UK is getting out of it. And £9 billion, but it's by 2030. You know, this is pennies, really, when you add it up.
Well, really, what they've tried to do is argue the referendum all over again. It seemed to me that the referendum was an argument over, on the one hand, control.
Yeah.
So the people that wanted to leave wanted to control our own laws, and the people that wanted to remain said, well, controlling over our laws, that doesn't matter so much because it's easier to trade with Europe. And that's the dichotomy, right? Yeah. On the one hand, do you want easier trade with Europe? On the other hand, do you want to control your own laws?
Although, of course, the reality is that trade with Europe has increased since Brexit. Anyway, we are going to the House of Commons now. We can see pictures there of the current statement or question.
Emma Reynolds, I believe, from the Treasury speaking there. Treasury questions are ongoing. When Treasury questions conclude, the Prime Minister will get onto his feet for the EU statement. So we'll just keep an eye on what's going on in the Commons. But there's one other area that I think we have not yet covered in any great detail at all, and that's energy. The idea that Britain will sign up to the European energy market, the agreement commits the UK to explore this option and, most perniciously, some argue, join up to the EU's carbon pricing scheme. The EU has a carbon tax across lots of different elements of its economy. And, of course, the UK has some carbon pricing as well, but it's lower than the EU.
Yes, and our energy bills are already extraordinarily high. For domestic reasons as well as international reasons, this could make them higher. And it means that we could not ditch our net zero commitments, our net zero legislation, because we're now tied in. So let's say after the next general election, a party comes to power that wants to reverse the net zero commitments. How can they practically do that now? It's very difficult to see how that's legally possible. So
without sort of ripping up this entire deal.
Exactly. Yeah. And what if the EU won't allow us to renegotiate, or they impose unacceptable costs in other areas, perhaps fishing, perhaps trade, in order to get out of the net zero commitments? It goes extraordinarily into the future, doesn't it?
And that's the extraordinary thing, isn't it? That it's not just about what the EU rules are, because some people might say, oh, the carbon tax in the EU is not that different from what we were going to have in the UK anyway. It's a little bit higher, but it doesn't really matter. But it means that if we want to change it, this is now it's just linked to Europe in any way. Trying to scrap this sort of carbon pricing, well, it suddenly becomes a European negotiation.
Yes.
The more of our economy that is intertwined with Europe, any domestic decision that needs to be made, it's no longer a decision for this House of Commons that we're looking at on our screens right now. Suddenly it becomes a negotiation that the Prime Minister and the government have to trudge off to Europe to go and beg to change our own domestic legislation.
And what are the implications for future trade deals, for example, with the United States? Because the deal that was agreed last week was very restricted. There were some good elements of it, but it was not a free trade deal. There's many, many more negotiations to come. We know that the Trump administration doesn't like the EU. We know that they don't like the EU's environmental and particularly their digital restrictions.
Yes.
Will the Trump government now look less favourably on the UK and any potential future trade arrangement? It's very concerning.
And I think this is one of the most interesting elements of all of this, because we've signed up to a trade deal with India, which actually is much more comprehensive than the trade deal with the United States. We're also members of the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, the CPTPP.
Well done.
And all of these trade deals have arbitration mechanisms that mean that if we make it harder for these guys to trade with us, well, they can sue Britain as a country.
Yes.
So if the EU passes legislation that then we have to accept that hinders our trade with any of the CPTPP countries or with America or with India, or frankly with Canada, Australia or New Zealand as well, well, then we would be liable to be sued in international arbitration by those countries that feel like they're being put in a disadvantage in trade thanks to things that have been passed in Brussels.
And absolutely. And the youth mobility scheme is concerning. We don't know the details of that yet. It's just an agreement to further negotiate. But the idea that this will be French and German gap year students coming over to work in a pub and learning English, we've got to remember that there are an awful lot of people who have recently gained citizenship in the EU, having come from all sorts of other places in the world, who will be eligible if they have a French passport, a German passport, a Polish passport, an Italian passport, whatever it may be. Will they be eligible under the youth mobility scheme, in which case it's just a further expansion of immigration?
And we don't know if the youth mobility scheme is going to be cut off at the age of 30 or at the age of 35. I mean, we've got a 35-year cut-off with Australia, I believe. If it's 35, remember when we had free movement with the European Union? More than half of all of the free movement of people that came to the United Kingdom under the free movement system were under the age of 35.
So it is free movement by another name. And what happens when people overstay their visas? We know that we have a problem in this country with compelling people to leave if their visas have overstayed. If they've started a family, then they'll have rights under the ECHR. It'll be very, very difficult to remove people. So, you know, the idea of gap year students coming to do a bit of work and learn English, I don't have a problem with. But it's the implications of what that means and how widespread it could be and how difficult it could be to reverse.
But I suppose the bet that the government has made is that most people are not going to notice or perhaps even mind if the UK signs up to EU phytosanitary standards. I mean, most people don't come across that in their day-to-day lives. I mean, we don't know how our food is regulated. If the EU's regulating it, perhaps they won't notice. What people might notice is if e-gates in more European airports are open to Brits. Has all of this sovereignty been passed over for access to e-gates? Well, let's hear from the Prime Minister. He's going to make his case here in the House of Commons.
With permission, I'd like to update the House on the 3 recent trade deals we've struck in the national interest. But first, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say something about the horrific situation in Gaza, where the level of suffering, innocent children being bombed again, is utterly intolerable. Mr. Speaker, over the weekend we coordinated a response with our allies, as set out in my statement with President Macron and Prime Minister Carney last night. And I want to put on record today that we're horrified by the escalation from Israel. We repeat our demand for a ceasefire as the only way to free the hostages. We repeat our opposition to settlements in the West Bank. And we repeat our demand to massively scale up humanitarian assistance into Gaza. The recent announcement that Israel will allow a basic quantity of food into Gaza, a basic quantity, is totally and utterly inadequate. So we must coordinate our response, because this war has gone on for far too long. We cannot allow the people of Gaza to starve, and the Foreign Secretary will come to the House shortly to set out our response in detail. Mr. Speaker, let me turn now to the 3 deals this government has struck. The principles we took into the negotiations are clear and simple. Does it drive down bills? Does it drive up jobs? Does it strengthen our borders? And in each case, the answer is resoundingly yes. These deals release us from the tired arguments of the past and, as an independent sovereign nation, allow us to seize the opportunities of the future. A clear message sent across the globe that Britain is back on the world stage. Mr. Speaker, a trade deal with the world's fastest growing economy, India, cutting tariffs for British industries, a huge boost for our whisky and gin distilleries. Their only concern now, Mr. Speaker, is whether they can produce enough to sell. And for our car manufacturers, tariffs slashed from over 100% to just 10%, with no concessions on visas. A trade deal with the world's richest economy, the United States, slashing tariffs, saving thousands upon thousands of jobs in car manufacturing in places like JLR, protecting our steel and aluminium exports and safeguarding interests for our hugely important pharmaceutical sector. But, Mr. Speaker, I can already see that when it comes to this hat-trick of deals, it's our new partnership with the EU that they most want to talk about. And, Mr. Speaker, and given their abject failure to strike a deal with India or the US, I can't say I blame them. So let me spell out the benefits of this deal, which gives our country an unprecedented level of access to the EU market. Mr. Speaker, the best access of any nation outside the EU or EFTA. I will start with our security, because when Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine over 3 years ago now, the gauntlet was thrown down, and it's our responsibility to step up. That is what this world demands, and it's what this partnership delivers, strengthening our national security through our new security and defence partnership. Mr. Speaker, that paves the way for British defence firms to access the EU's €150 billion defence fund. That will support British jobs, British wages, British livelihoods. The partnership also increases cooperation on emissions trading, saving UK businesses from having to pay up to £800 million of EU carbon taxes, once again backing British businesses. The deal will drive down bills with increased cooperation on energy, because the agreement negotiated by the party opposite left us with a more expensive way of working with our neighbours. A needless rupture, despite our grids being connected by underseas cables. This partnership brings those systems together again, benefiting British bill payers and boosting clean British power in the North Sea. Mr. Speaker, it also strengthens our borders, because again the previous deal left a huge gap, weakened our ability to work together to tackle illegal migration, the ultimate cross-border challenge. This partnership closes that gap, including joint work on returns, preventing channel crossings and working upstream in key source and transit countries, cooperating along the whole migration route to strengthen our hand in the fight against the vile smuggling gangs. It boosts our cooperation on law enforcement, Mr. Speaker, combating terrorism and serious organised crime, with closer operational work with agencies like Europol and better sharing of intelligence and data, including, for the first time, facial imaging. Mr. Speaker, it helps British holidaymakers because they will be able to use e-gates when they travel to Europe, ending those huge queues to passport control. And it delivers for our young people because we're now on a path towards a controlled youth experience scheme with firm caps on numbers and visa controls. A relationship we have with so many countries around the world, some actually even set up by the party opposite. We should be proud to give our young people that opportunity. And Mr. Speaker, not for the first time, this government has delivered for Britain's steel industry, protecting our steel exports from new EU tariffs, backing our steel sector to the hilt. But last but certainly not least, Mr. Speaker, we've a new SBS deal, as promised in our manifesto, that will cut the price of the weekly shop, more money in the pockets of working people, less red tape for our exporters, no more lorry drivers queuing for 16 hours at the border with rotting food in the back, no more needless checks, the inevitable consequence of their policies that made it so much harder to trade, even within our own market, between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And Mr. Speaker, that means that British goods that have long been off the menu in Europe can regain their true place, including shellfish, hugely important in Cornwall, Devon and Scotland. Because, Mr. Speaker, not only does our deal on fish provide stability, with no increase in the amount that EU vessels can catch in British waters, it also provides a new SBS agreement which slashes costs and red tape for our exports into the European market. We sell 70% of our seafood into that market. It is a huge opportunity, which our £360 million investment in British fisheries will now look to export. Mr. Speaker, the reaction to this deal from business has been absolutely clear. Mr. Speaker, I know you're a stickler for time. I don't have time to run through the list of supportive quotes from businesses. But this... Fine. All right. But this new partnership...
was great.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this new partnership has been backed. This isn't the full list. The Federation of Small Businesses, the CBI, the British Retail Consortium, Asda, Morrison's, Salmon Scotland, the Food and Drink Foundation, the British Chamber of Commerce, Ryanair, Vodafone, producers of meat, foil and poultry, and on it goes. And I wonder whether that long list of businesses coming out to support this deal will temper the reaction of the Leader of the Opposition in her response. But then again, for weeks now, she's been dismissive of the benefits of any trade deal, in defiance, frankly, of her party's history. But it's not just them, it's also the member for Clacton, who's not here, the member for Kingston, who've both shown in their own ways that their parties simply do not get that if your whole approach to our allies is about striking a pose, then you don't get to strike a deal. And, Mr. Speaker, what that means in a world like ours, where deals are ever more the currency of security and justice, is that you don't get to make a difference and you don't get to deliver for Britain. That is what this partnership means. And for years we were told it couldn't be done. What they meant was they couldn't do it. We were told that a deal with the US or India was impossible. What they meant was impossible for them. We were told that a choice must be made between the US and the EU. What they meant was they couldn't do a deal with both. Mr. Speaker, this government can and this government will, because we stay in the room, we fight for the national interest and we put the British people first. That is what these deals represent, a signal that we're back on the world stage, a global champion of free trade, playing our historic role on European security, but above all, making deals that put money in the pockets of working people. Because, Mr. Speaker, that is what independent sovereign nations do, and I commend this statement to the House.
Leader of the Opposition, come in, Pedro.
Mr. Speaker, when Labour negotiates, Britain loses. He talks about a hat trick of deals. They are own goals. In 2020, the Conservatives concluded the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, the largest and most comprehensive free trade agreement in the world. We agreed to come back in 5 years to improve terms. This renegotiation should have been an opportunity to improve terms for our country. The terms are improved for the EU. And the Prime Minister can dress it up as much as he wants, but he has failed. It is bad for bills, it is bad for jobs, and it is bad for borders. This is not a deal made for Britain. This is a deal made for Labour's PR to show them on the world stage. But it is a stitch-up for our country for their short-term headlines. Let's take the Prime Minister's abject failures one by one. First, on fishing. He has given away the prize most desired by EU member states and done so for almost nothing. Mr. Speaker, it is very easy to sign deals if you're prepared to give everything away for pennies. This deal locks out our fishermen until 2038. We are now in a worse position than the Faroe Islands, a set of islands with the population of Scarborough, but who get to have annual negotiations. And the Prime Minister quoted some organisations welcoming his deal. He doesn't listen to them normally, but he left one out deliberately, the National Federation of Fishermen's Organisations, who have described the deal as a surrender and a giveaway. This is a Prime Minister who would pay to give away his family silver. Why is the Prime Minister selling our fishermen down the river? Is it because they don't vote Labour? Second, on food and agriculture, the Prime Minister is going to pay the EU, Mr. Speaker, he's going to pay the EU to abide by laws that we have no say on. While British farmers struggle with the family farms tax his Chancellor has imposed on them, their regulations will now be made in Paris and enforced in Brussels. It is a total capitulation. We're not in the EU. We are not at the table. So can the Prime Minister tell us how is he going to ensure accountability for the hundreds of regulations he has signed this country up to? Third, on energy. The Prime Minister has shackled us to the EU's emissions trading scheme. This means the government can no longer cut energy costs without the EU's permission. It will also unravel parts of the India FTA he's just negotiated. This isn't a technicality, it is a betrayal. The House should be in no doubt. This means higher bills, more pain, and less flexibility. Fourth, on his own manifesto promises, the Prime Minister said that we would not rejoin the single market. He promised no new payments, that he would protect British interests. That promise has lasted about as long as his commitment to protect pensioners' winter fuel allowance. He said whatever was needed to win power, Mr. Speaker, and now he'll say whatever is needed to keep it, even if it means selling out our sovereignty, our businesses, and the public. The truth is that most of what was announced yesterday was not a deal. There was no binding agreement on anything. Most of the items outlined are simply agreements to enter into further discussions we are already having. The Prime Minister is boasting that we will now avoid airport queues because we'll get access to EU e-gates. It sounds great, except it isn't true. Some airports already allow it. This deal does not guarantee it anywhere. Each country still has to agree. And that, Mr. Speaker, sums up this deal perfectly. It is a lot of spin to disguise the terrible substance. Having previously ruled out a youth mobility scheme, the Prime Minister is now desperately trying to hide his latest U-turn by rebranding it as an experience. This is risen. We have no details on any cap, no details on any time limit, which begs the question, why is the government talking about increasing migration before it has got a grip on the small boats or the legal migration system? I know the Prime Minister doesn't like answering questions, but people out there want to know, can we have some honesty as to what has been discussed? How many young European workers does the Prime Minister think would be acceptable? And will they be able to bring dependents? Even Even the defence commitments in this deal are hopelessly one-sided. We're making payments, but they are offering dialogue and consultation. This is a pitiful return for the country that leads NATO in Europe with troops on the ground in Estonia defending our allies. Can the Prime Minister tell us why there's not a single word in his statement about the money we will now be sending to Brussels? And can he set out how much those payments will cost taxpayers? Mr. Speaker, in government, details matter, and so does honesty. They're laughing, but this is a bad deal for the country. Look at them. This is how they laughed at the budget. They have no idea what it is they signed up to. He said he would stay out of the single market. He's going into the single market for agri-food, electricity and energy. He said he'd stay out of the customs union, but he is accepting EU tariff rules. How does he plan to stop the EU changing them to our disadvantage? He has no idea, neither do any of them. Because the British people know, Mr. Speaker, when they are being misled. They know that headlines fail. He didn't listen to the CBI on the jobs tax. He didn't listen to the FSB on the family farms tax. This deal has already unraveled. The damage is becoming clear. The political consequences will be huge. And here he is trumpeting his success. And when he stands up in a moment, he'll deflect, he'll dismiss, he'll distract. But we all know the truth. This was a fiction of a speech, a fraud of a deal, a failure of a Prime Minister.
Oh dear. That was just such an unserious response. She says detailed matter in government. They matter in opposition as well. The SBS agreement cuts red tape and bureaucracy for all food and agriculture going into the EU. That's a massive boost for our supermarkets, for our farmers and others. Why is it that all the supermarkets have come out behind this? Because they know how important the SBS agreement is. It's completely in our favour. Huge amount of detail there. The best agreement. On defence and security. Defence and security. Greater operational coordination. And she's against it at a time like that. It opens the gate to the EU Defence Procurement Fund of €150 billion. That was a condition of it. It saves, Mr. Speaker, she complains about emissions. Businesses were, I'll tell you how much, businesses were going to pay £800 million a year in tariffs that they won't now pay. That's why they're coming out in support of it. That's how much. The detail matters. The detail matters. Energy, we're already connected. We're not using that energy connection. Electrical access to the market. On steel, getting rid of the tariffs that will support British steel. And she's against it yet again. E-gates. And she says they're already in existence. This clears the way for e-gates everywhere. That's the huge difference. And if any of them doubt that, they should travel through a border today and see the long queues. And law enforcement, better operational working with Europol, and she's against it. Information sharing on facial mapping, dealing with criminal records, and she's against it.
Against everything.
Absolutely unserious. She's also against the India deal, which of course does huge things for trades like whiskey, where their only concern is whether they can produce enough. They've been absolutely clear about supporting the India deal, a deal they tried to do, and she now says she's against it. The US deal, which saved thousands upon thousands of jobs in car manufacturing, and JLR. I don't know whether she had the chance to do that trip to JLR, but she really ought to before she responds like that again. The US deal that reduces tariffs on steel so our steel can be sold into America, and she's against it and supports our whiskey and gin. Mr. Speaker, she is against every single deal. She's the only ex-Trade Secretary who's against every single deal. This deal has been welcomed broadly because they're good deals. Now let me turn, Mr. Speaker, you don't get a great long list of endorsements from all of the business associations, all of the companies. It's just they're so unserious that they're lost. They're lost into a descent in the abyss. They used to be a proud party of trading agreements. They have slid off into the abyss. That's where they are. And Mr. Speaker, on fishing, none of the rights negotiated by the party opposite have been removed. None of the rights. No change to access to coastal communities, the same as before. No reduction in the British quota or increase in EU quota, same as before. Reciprocal arrangements, same as before. What is new, Mr. Speaker, is the SPS agreement. For the first time and permanent, they were unable to do this. That reopens the EU market for shellfish and makes it much easier to sell British fish into our largest trading partner. And Mr. Speaker, that's hugely significant because 72% of British fish is traded into EU markets. It's now easier to do that. And we're backing that with £360 million for our fishing and coastal grants. Mr. Speaker, she talks about the youth experience scheme. It is a capped scheme. It is time limited. It is capped. It's time limited. It is balanced. Mr. Speaker, on relation to standards, the truth is this: we are currently aligned in our standards. We just don't get the benefit of it. We want to continue to have high standards, and that's what the British public want, and that's what this deal delivers. We will have a role in shaping any future rules, and application of them is specifically subject to our constitutional arrangements. We will have a process in this Parliament to apply the rules. But let's be clear, we are already applying those rules at the moment. We're just not getting the advantage. This strips that away. It's good for our country, good for our economy. And it's a shame that she can't stand up and support it.
Chairman of the Trade and Industry Committee, Liam Burn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This deal is good for business and this deal is good for Britain. I want to congratulate the Prime Minister on embracing a good half of the Select Committee's recommendations, agreed, if I might say, Mr. Speaker, cross-party. While some in this House are proposing trade barriers, he is building trade bridges, and that is in the national interest. We have a deal, Mr. Speaker, but we do not have a date. And the OBR can't score the gains, and business can't plan for the benefits, and we can't suspend customs checks in Northern Ireland until we know when the new SPS checks will come into force. So what timetable has the Prime Minister given to his negotiators for when that SPS deal will come into effect? Because business needs certainty, and for that we need clarity.
Can I first pick up on his point about cross-party support at the Select Committee? Because there are members of the party opposite who I think are ashamed by the response of the Leader of the Opposition and know very well that these are good deals that should be supported. A number of backbench MPs are already coming out saying actually these deals are good and in the national interest. Mr. Speaker, you know who they are. Mr. Speaker, on the question of pace, let me assure the honourable gentleman, we've moved at pace to get the deals, and our instructions to our teams are to move at pace now to implement the deals, and that's what we'll do. We negotiated these in a number of short months. We'll keep moving at the same pace.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks about the appalling situation in Gaza? And when he's working with our French and Canadian colleagues to put pressure on Netanyahu, will he consider, with the French, having a formal recognition of the state of Palestine? Speaker, coming to the EU reset deal, the Prime Minister will know that we don't think this deal goes far enough to fix our broken relationship with Europe. But there are many parts that we do welcome. We have long been arguing for an agri-food deal to help British farmers export to Europe. We have long argued for a youth mobility scheme to give our young people incredible new opportunities and British businesses, especially in hospitality, a boost. We have long argued for closer alliances on defence in the face of Putin's imperialism and Trump's unpredictability. So can I welcome the progress on these issues, even if it is only very limited progress on things like youth mobility? Because, Mr. Speaker, we've all seen the terrible damage caused by the Conservatives' Brexit deal. And hearing the Conservative leader complain today is like listening to a backseat driver who previously crashed the car. Our Our country has moved on from the divisive Brexit wars of a decade ago, and some members of this House need to do the same. But does the Prime Minister accept that this deal must be only the first step? And we must be far more ambitious in strengthening our economic and security ties with our nearest neighbours. We believe that a bespoke customs union is a key part of that. Not turning back to the past, but forming a new partnership that serves our national interest. I know the Prime Minister once made that a red line, but he will accept that the world has changed since then. So will he open negotiations on a customs union to get a better deal for Britain? Mr. Speaker, a trade deal to dwarf all other trade deals.
Well, Mr. Speaker, on his question of first step, it is intended that this is the beginning of a process to complete on what we've already agreed, but also to have annual summits so that we can take our cooperation and coordination further step by step, and we will do that whilst keeping to the red lines that we had in our manifesto. On the question of a customs union, the problem with his proposal, as I know he knows, is that we've just struck the deal with India. We've just struck a deal with the US. If we now undo that good work, we undo all the benefits of those two deals. And for JLR and car manufacturers, this is the here and now of their jobs at the moment. And that is why we had our red lines and we've kept to those red lines. I'm not prepared to rip up the benefits that we've negotiated in these deals.
Chair of the Foreign First Select Committee.
Mr. Speaker, can I begin by thanking the Prime Minister for what he has said about Gaza? It couldn't be clearer, the message that he's sending to the far-right government of Netanyahu.
Well, we've been listening in to the House of Commons as the Prime Minister has been delivering a statement on his new EU deal, but also, of course, mentioning the American deal and the Indian deal. Interestingly there, the Prime Minister saying, well, partly agreeing with the Liberal Democrat leader, saying there's further integration, further cooperation to go. This isn't the last of Europe. There are going to be annual summits now, where presumably new agreements are reached.
And interesting that he said the reason for not returning to the customs union was because we're negotiating these deals with India and the US, so not in principle opposed to returning. But it is an interesting statement, and obviously Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, very, very critical of the deal, pointing out that the one organisation that hadn't signed up in support was the Fishermen's Organisation. But of course Starmer says that actually will make it easier for fishermen to sell fish into Europe. Brits don't eat much fish, so actually could this be a net benefit?
Brits don't eat much fish. Every blooming Friday Brits eat fish. But
the British fishermen sell more fish to Europe than...
Yes.
That's what I mean. We do eat fish, but the majority of their trade is with the EU, and obviously reducing red tape, Starmer thinks, will be a positive for them.
But it did seem like it was just an utter rerun of the debates that were had in 2015 and 2016. I mean 10 or 9 years ago. I mean, again and again and again, the Prime Minister listed these big business organisation lists. Do we remember George Osborne reeling out the big business organisation lists as if that was going to win over people? It didn't in the referendum, and it did sound very, very similar, like these sort of big organisations saying this, and then perhaps a more sympathetic community pointed out by Kemi Badenoch there, the fishermen who clearly are going to be hammered by this, but also Kemi Badenoch mentioning the farmers who are now going to have their rules set by Brussels rather than this Parliament in this country.
Although Keir Starmer did say that the UK would have a role in setting the rules, although that wasn't clear how, and we'll have to dig into the detail. But the domestic politics of this are really interesting, because it's hard to see how this will win any votes. It may not lose any votes, but most people think that Brexit is done and dusted. Of course, they want it to be able to go on holiday. Of course, they want trade. But it's difficult to see how votes will be won, and really what's in it for Britain, apart from the e-gates, but they're already possible at many airports. But I wonder if the aim for Labour is this defence cooperation. That is the big news on everybody's minds this year. How do we rearm? How do we do that? Of course, we want to cooperate with the EU when it comes to defence. Maybe that's the prize.
Well, there's so much more to explore there, but we're going to leave the House of Commons now, because there is much more to cover today. Indeed, a UK-based people smuggler who ran a £12 million illegal boat crossing operation, he's been jailed for 25 years.
Yes, 42-year-old Ahmed Ebid is believed to be the first UK-based organiser of Mediterranean boat crossings and admitted conspiracy to assist unlawful immigration.
Well, let's speak to our Home and Security editor, Mark White, now with more on this story. Mark, a very significant sentence for this man.
For a very significant figure, a man who actually arrived in the UK on a small boat himself in 2022. Within months of arriving, he was masterminding a massive smuggling operation across the Mediterranean, using dilapidated old fishing boats to cross from North Africa to Italian islands like Lampedusa. I was there actually at the time when Lampedusa was suffering a very, very significant deluge of these boats arriving on its shores, and it was a real crisis for the Italian government at that point. Well, this man was out there pushing these boats across. He was responsible for pushing almost 4,000 migrants onto these boats and across the Mediterranean at around £3,000 per migrant per journey. So all told, for the journeys they know about, his organised crime group made some £12 million in profits. Now, he's an Egyptian national, as I say, an illegal who arrived by a small boat himself, claimed asylum. He'd never got a final decision on his protracted asylum claim, but he'd been jailed previously in Italy on drugs offences for 5 years in prison. Not the kind of individual who would be conducive to the public good, you would imagine, but still he was being decided on. And during that time when he was in this country, living in southwest London, he was free to organise this massive smuggling operation and make millions of pounds for his organised crime group. But now, as you say, he's behind bars, serving some 25 years in prison. We've had a statement from Tim Burton, who's a specialist prosecutor for the Crown Prosecution Service, who said Ahmed Abid played a leading role in a sophisticated operation which breached immigration laws and endangered lives for his own and others' financial gain. Vulnerable people were transported on long sea journeys in ill-equipped fishing vessels, completely unsuitable for carrying the large number of passengers who were on board. His repeated involvement in helping to facilitate these dangerous crossings showed a complete disregard for the safety of thousands of people whose lives were put at serious risk. And for those that might be asking the question, well, why should we care? These were people who were being smuggled across the Mediterranean, thousands of miles from here. The fact is, this is all part of the organised people smuggling trade that sees many of those people who come across the Mediterranean and other routes through the likes of the Western Balkans arrive on the shores of northern France with a view to coming across to the UK in record numbers.
Now, Mark, you've also been at a Westminster court today because a second man has been charged in this curious case of apparent arson against property owned by the Prime Minister.
Yeah, this case just gets all the more strange with every passing charge that we hear about. This is Stanislav Karpiuk, who is a Ukrainian, born in Ukraine, but raised for at least part of the time in Romania. He's a Romanian national in that sense, but has been living for a number of years in the UK, currently addressed in Romford in East London. He is charged alongside another Ukrainian, Roman Lavranovich, who appeared in court last Friday. They are both charged with a series of firebomb attacks on properties linked to Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. One of those firebomb attacks was on a property in Kentish Town, confined to the entrance to that property and quickly dealt with. That was on the 12th of May. 4 days before that, he had, or 4 days before that, another piece of property, a car this time, that was linked to Keir Starmer previously. He had sold that to a neighbour on that same street in Kentish Town, was set ablaze. And then a day before the Kentish Town house fire, another property that was owned by Sir Keir Starmer 2 decades ago. Was set fire as well, and someone had to be rescued from the property in that time, but were uninjured. So yeah, a strange case, no idea yet on the possible motivation, just that 2 Ukrainians have been charged. A third man, a 34-year-old who was arrested in Chelsea yesterday, is still being questioned by police.
Mark, thank you, and I'm sure you'll be bringing us up to date as more developments occur. Very strange case. Well, moving on now.
Yes, a 41-year-old, Lucy Connolly this is, has failed in her appeal against her sentence for inciting racial hatred.
The wife of a former Conservative councillor was jailed for 31 months last October after calling for mass deportations and for migrant hotels to be burnt down. This was in the wake of the Southport attacks last summer, when 3 girls were tragically murdered at a Taylor Swift-themed dance party.
Well, to discuss this further, we're joined by the broadcaster and writer Emma Trimble and the policing and crime commentator Danny Shaw. Emma, let's start with you. Clearly, Lucy Connolly pleaded guilty in the first instance to the crimes that she was charged with. Some might argue if she pleaded guilty, why shouldn't she be in prison?
Well, I think that the point that the Free Speech Union, who've been supporting her case, have made is that if she hadn't pled guilty in that first instance, and she probably pled guilty because she believed that they were going to throw the book at her, then probably this wouldn't have even gone to court. It wouldn't have, certainly, it's very unlikely that it would have ended up in this situation. I think the problem here is twofold. So in the initial sentence, the judge has given much lesser sentences to people who have done far worse than Lucy Connolly around the same time as the Southport riots, including one teenager who had actually been involved in the mob violence outside of a pub that resulted in somebody being beaten up and people being barricaded inside of the pub, was given a lesser sentence. Somebody else who posed with a decommissioned AK-47 and threatened Tommy Robinson also got a lesser sentence. And then the second aspect of this is the refusal for her to be allowed out on licence, not allowing her out on bail. And I think, all you have to do is look at the enormous number of cases that people have been citing on this. GB News' own Matt Goodwin pointed out that somebody who had arrived here illegally and then voiced support for Hamas was also treated in a light-handed way. The Labour councillor Ricky Jones, who said that Southport protesters should have their throats cut, was released on bail. And you only have to look at the fact that the government are talking about releasing even dangerous criminals, sex offenders, early. There have been terrorists who have been released halfway through their sentences. Anjem Chowdhury, who was convicted for inviting support of Islamic State, he was released initially halfway through his sentence. So I think the point here is that the way that Lucy Connolly is being treated is vindictive and appears to be politically motivated.
Danny, what do you say to that? Is this a political prisoner? Is this another example of two-tier justice?
I don't think so. First of all, I think everyone's got sympathy for Lucy Connolly and what she went through 14 years ago when she lost her son, who was 18 months old. I can't imagine what that must be like for her and have to deal with that, and for events to trigger the memory and the trauma of that. And I also think it will be very difficult for her husband, who's coping without her, and her 12-year-old daughter. It's very, very difficult when you have a loved one in prison who has been the primary carer, particularly for a child. So my sympathies are with her and her family to that extent. But I think when you look very closely at this judgment and the facts, and that it has been gone through in extraordinary level of detail by the Court of Appeal, by very experienced judges, who not only looked at all the details and the files in this case, but actually took the very unusual step in an appeal to call the appellant, Lucy Connolly, and also they called to give evidence in person her barrister at her original sentencing. That's a very unusual case in an appeal of this nature. When you look at the care with which they considered this case, I think you're driven to the conclusion that that they were probably right. And I think what the Court of Appeal had to consider was not to look at other cases that are completely unrelated, but to look at whether the sentence was manifestly excessive. That's not to say that it was harsh. I think it was a harsh sentence. And it's possible that you could make an argument to say that, you know, there's a few months here or there could have been reduced. The Court of Appeal had to decide whether it was manifestly excessive. And they came to the conclusion that it wasn't.
Danny, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at a picture of the tweet that she sent. And I just really struggle to see how any reasonable person could see this as genuine incitement. She said, "Set fire to all the hotels for all I care. And while you're at it, take the treacherous government and politicians with them." What reasonable person could interpret that as a genuine call to arms? As if she genuinely wanted people to set fire to hotels. She said, "Set fire to hotels for all I care." To me, that sounds like a flippant remark. An outrageous remark, yes, but not an inciting remark.
Well, she herself admitted posting that tweet and admitted the offence of threatening, abusive or insulting with intent to stir up racial hatred or where it was likely to stir up racial hatred.
Under clearly terrible counsel.
Yeah, can I just answer?
Of course.
She admitted that, and she also admitted that it fell into the category of directly encouraging activity which threatens or endangers life. She admitted that in a declaration that she made with her lawyer before the first sentencing hearing. And the judgment today is quite clear. The words of the tweet are on the face an incitement to serious violence. Those are the words of the judges who've considered this case with a lot more detail and care than I have, and with respect than you have. And that is why, in the context of the situation, if she was to send out a tweet today on a nice sunny afternoon today like that, there would be a very different outcome. She would have to take it down and she might be punished for it, but there would be a different outcome. But in the context of what was happening last July and August, trouble had already kicked off. Tensions were very high and inflamed.
Let's bring in Emma Trimble now.
You have to understand
on that
the
point of the
circumstances
context, of the wider context.
Context is very important
in this case, Emma.
Look, I think this is very clearly wrong, and anybody looking at this with any common sense can see that it's wrong. And some people might like to make the argument that this is the law, but I think what we can all agree on is that we don't necessarily like the direction that the law is taking, in particular the fact that you mentioned context. Well, once she'd been arrested, they've looked at her private correspondence and decided that some of the things that she said in private WhatsApp chats is racist. Now, of course, it's not illegal to be racist, but that seems to be something that's been factored in here. And like I said, the fact that Anjem Chowdhury, one of the most prolific Islamist radicalizers that this country has ever seen, was released early from prison. If we're talking about the risk of releasing her, why was she not allowed out on license? She deleted the tweet, she apologized, she showed remorse that she had tweeted it in the first place. She's obviously not a danger to the public. She's been taken away from her child for a significant amount of time. Over 280 days she's been in prison now. She does not pose a risk to the public, yet this government are releasing people who do, and much more likely are posing a risk to the public by being released early. And if we're talking about incitement, I think you're right, Tom. I look at that tweet and, you might think, well, that's awful. It's an awful thing to say, and I'm sure she would agree with you. But it doesn't strike me as something that is straightforwardly incitement. And whereas if you look at the Labour councillor who very explicitly said to go and slit the throats of the Southport protesters, that seems to me to be much more straightforwardly incitement, and that was something that was said out in public and filmed. So I think it's very clear that the context here that has led to the treatment of Lucy Connolly being so disproportionate in, I would say, the majority of the public's opinion, it seems, the context is that that Keir Starmer came out very early on and made it clear that he wanted an example made of the people who had been posting things online. And, it doesn't mean that he called up the judge and said, you have to give her a harsher sentence. That's not what I'm suggesting. But that was the general atmosphere. And I don't think that that is the way that the justice system should work. That is something that will inevitably lead to injustice. And as I say, I think many people looking at this with common sense would say this is just.
A final word to Danny Shaw on that point then. Could it have been that the Prime Minister lent on services to make an example of certain early posters? I mean, we saw this when the Prime Minister was Director of Public Prosecutions and the London riots took off. The fast-track justice arguably shut down those riots earlier. I mean, could there have been pressure in that similar sort of way?
There's no pressure applied on the judiciary to make sentencing decisions in individual cases, but they're aware of the context and the need to send out messages around deterrence and of these sentences. But the time she was sentenced, the riots had stopped. But what they had to look at was the circumstances. And it's actually interesting you raised the 2011 riots, because I was having a look back at that. And there were a lot of very heavy punishments imposed on people. 2 men got 4 years imprisonment for Facebook posts that were said to incite trouble. One 23-year-old man got a 6-month sentence for stealing a £3.50 bottle of water from a store that had been looted. There were very strong sentences then, which were supported by the then Conservative government. I didn't hear any claims then about two-tier justice. The context is that there were riots and serious disorder across the country in 2011, as there were last summer. And it's the context that you have to look at. And frankly, looking at other cases that bear no relation to this, involving terrorism or other matters, is not really helpful in this context. I would urge everyone who's interested in this case to read the judgment. It's on the judiciary website. Read it and read what the judges said about Lucy Connolly and the evidence she gave. They found her evidence to be incredible. They were very critical of her evidence that she got, and pointed out that they also would have expected someone in her situation with her personal circumstances, which they, expressed a lot of sympathy about, to have essentially expressed concern about the girls who had died in Southport, rather than encouraging other people.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there.
Violence.
Thank you so much, Danny Shaw and Emma Trimble. Thank you so much for coming on. Tom, it seems to me that we have a problem with the advice that people are given when they are arrested, that people plead guilty or accept cautions because they're frightened of the consequences without understanding the implications of what they're agreeing to.
If only she'd have gone to the Free Speech Union from the start.
And it's the same with Julian Fuchs, who accepted the caution for another tweet.
Well, we've got to move on now, because time is running out to join our biggest Great British giveaway to date. Yes, it's your chance to drive away with a brand new motorhome worth over £67,000, plus £5,000 in tax-free cash that you can spend however you would like. These are all the details.
It's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to win. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be spending your summer touring in this stylish Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. Worth over £67,000. This brand new 2025 model comes complete with kitchen and bathroom areas and enough space to comfortably sleep a family of 4. We'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to add a few of your favourite things, or just spend it however you like. Don't miss out, as lines close on the 6th of June. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, Gibraltar inches closer to joining the European free border zone, keeping its border with Spain open. But what does this mean for UK control post-Brexit, and why do we need a deal over Gibraltar at all? That next.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You have the power then
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain. It's 1:30 and a fascinating debate we had before the break there, Tom, between Emma Trimble and Danny Shaw about the Lucy Connolly case. Is it two-tier justice? Did she plead guilty wrongly? Very disturbing case, though.
Hugely disturbing, and I think it does get to a fundamental point, because I think Danny Shaw, our legal commentator, made some very fair points about what the law is in this country. But then this becomes a different sort of question. It's not, was the judgment right? Did the judge make the right decision given the context of the law? It's, are the politicians right in having this law in the first place? Should this be less of a legal argument about how this fits with all of our various speech codes in this country, or should it become a political argument about reforming the law so that people are allowed to be offensive, so that as long as people aren't directly and imminently inciting violence, they are allowed to say what they darn well want?
Well, I think it highlights the fact that some of our laws, the laws that people are being prosecuted under, were written in a pre-internet age when inciting violence meant going from door to door, encouraging people to come on a riot, not a flippant comment on social media. It's a bit like policing people's speech in the pub. You might say things in a pub after a few drinks that you don't really mean. And nobody takes it out of context, and yet if it's on social media it's a similar kind of sentiment, and yet we're finding that it's caught under existing law, so perhaps the law needs to change.
Absolutely imagine in hundreds of pubs across the country people are like
saying
fire
similar
starting
things.
bells for all I care. For me, the instructive bit is for all I care. I mean, that completely negates any sense that this is something that they actually want to happen or are calling for it to happen. It's an expression of indifference rather than intent.
Yes, and she's throwing it into the air, not directed at somebody, inciting a particular person or group of people to violence. I mean, it's a terrible tweet, but it does make clear that our laws are out of date.
And I spoke to an American lawyer about it when it happened, and he was telling me there is no way it would even be close to being anywhere near the courts in the United States, which actually have a free speech amendment, of course. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's lots more to come on the programme, all after your latest news update with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. The top story this lunchtime. A UK-based people smuggler who ran a £12 million illegal boat crossing operation has today been jailed for 25 years. 42-year-old Ahmed Abid helped move nearly 3,800 migrants from North Africa to Italy, some ending up in Britain while living in southwest London. He even told an associate to kill any migrants caught with phones to avoid law enforcement. Abid is believed to be the first UK-based organiser of Mediterranean boat crossings and admitted conspiracy to assist unlawful immigration. A judge called the profits he made truly staggering and said Abid ruthlessly exploited the hard-earned savings of desperate individuals. The wife of a former Conservative councillor has lost her bid to cut her jail sentence for an online rant about migrants posted on the day of the Southport attacks. Lucy Connolly was jailed for 31 months after calling for asylum hotels to be, quote, set on fire in a post viewed over 300,000 times before being deleted. She claimed in court she was grieving and never meant to incite violence, but judges rejected her appeal. They said her version of events didn't justify reducing the sentence. Connolly had pleaded guilty to inciting racial hatred after more racist messages were found on her phone. Tommy Robinson is due to be released from prison within a week after his 18-month sentence for contempt of court was cut by 4 months. He was jailed last year for breaching an injunction that barred him from repeating claims about a Syrian refugee who had successfully sued him for libel. At a High Court hearing this morning, lawyers argued Robinson had shown commitment to comply with the order. But the judge said there was no contrition or remorse, though he did accept Robinson had shown a, quote, change in attitude. Robinson, real name Stephen Yaxley Lennon, attended that hearing via video link earlier today. And a second man has appeared in court over firebomb attacks on properties linked to the Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. 26-year-old Stanislav Karpich was arrested at Luton Airport and charged with conspiracy to cause damage by fire alongside another Ukrainian man. The attacks targeted homes in Islington and in Kentish Town, including one that Sir Keir Starmer lived in before becoming Prime Minister. Karpich appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court earlier today and was remanded in custody. He'll appear at the Old Bailey on the 6th of June alongside his co-accused Roman Larinovich. That's it from me for now. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at the top of the hour. Now, though, it's over to Miriam and Tom.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back. It's 1:35 and Gibraltar's chief minister has said that a deal between the UK and the EU on the ROC's post-Brexit status is excruciatingly close.
Well, this deal would reportedly see Gibraltar join what's known as the Schengen zone, that no-border area across the European continent to keep its border open with Spain.
Well, it comes a day after the British government concluded a so-called reset deal with the EU.
So let's go to our man on the ground there. Jack Carson is in Gibraltar for us. Jack, what do we know? Well, that's not Jack Carson, that's Emma. We were speaking to her a little bit earlier.
She's very knowledgeable. Maybe she knows all about the Gibraltar.
Oh, Jack's here now. Sorry, Jack. Go ahead, start again.
Well, thank you very much. Well, it's all about fluidity. That's what the Chief Minister, Fabian Picardo, told us a little bit earlier on, for both for people and for goods. That's why, for them, part of this agreement, which looks like to be Gibraltar joining the Schengen zone, would be about that fluidity of people and goods. We think it's around 15,000 people that come into Gibraltar every day from Spain to work. About 30,000 people is a working population here in Gibraltar. So that's why in sorting out an agreement is so important for them. But sovereignty is one of the concerns a lot of people here in Gibraltar have, and maintaining this as a British overseas territory. All around us here on Main Street in Gibraltar at the moment, but all around us here are reminders of this being a British overseas territory. Look at this, we've got a beautiful red post box here in the background, one of the UK's most famous high street stores as well, and this beautiful commemoration here to all of those who have been part of the Corps of Royal Engineers all the way from 1704. This whole place is full of history, and a lot of people here have told us today they want to remain British and want to make sure that this agreement does not give away any sense of sovereignty here in Gibraltar. But Chief Minister of Gibraltar, Fabian Picardo, spoke to us on GB News earlier on. Here's what he said.
Well, I said yesterday to Gibraltar Television, we are excruciatingly close. We are
almost there, but, it's not over till the fat lady sings, and we're hoping that she's going to treat us to an opera very soon. Well, 15,000 people come into Gibraltar every day to work. That's half of the population of Gibraltar and half of the working population of Gibraltar. So 30,000 people work in Gibraltar. 15,000 of them have to come across that Schengen frontier every day and back into Schengen. So you can imagine, if they had to do full passport formalities, it would take them longer than the working day to be able to come into Gibraltar. So we need an arrangement on fluidity, not freedom of movement, fluidity of people across that frontier into Gibraltar and out back into the European Union.
Yeah, and there's been concerns about whether Spanish border officials would be based at the Gibraltar International Airport. That seems to be a red line for both the Gibraltar government and the UK government as well. And people here have been giving us their reaction. Simon McIntosh, who's a Gibraltarian, lived here for 40 years, gave us this reaction earlier on.
I think the Spanish were very happy once Keir Starmer came into power. All their Christmases had come at once, basically, because they know that he's willing to get back in with the EU, because at the end of the day, he's a globalist. He'll be willing to do almost anything. And so many tweets by David Lammy and by David Lammy makes it about decolonisation. The only reason Gibraltar is great is because it was an ex-colony. So the last thing we want to think about is decolonisation.
But you can see the beautiful Gibraltar rock behind me. There is hope that this agreement will make things easier for the Gibraltarians in order with that fluidity at the border for goods and services. But without seeing the agreement yet, we know it's excruciatingly close. Those concerns do still exist around what it looks like with the future of sovereignty here.
OK, well, Jack Carson, thanks indeed for joining us on what is perhaps your hardest posting to date, enjoying the sunshine there in Gibraltar.
It does look rather beautiful, doesn't it? I mean, it's very interesting, the situation in Gibraltar, because 96% have voted to stay in the EU, very understandably. But the Vox Party, Spain's populist party, in their manifesto at the last election was to bring Gibraltar back under Spanish control.
The Spanish are incredibly hypocritical on it because they have enclaves in Morocco.
Indeed.
But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come. Indeed, we're going to be live with our reporter speaking to fishermen about Starmer's EU reset deal. Don't miss it. Lots of boats to come.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through this morning, any low cloud clearing away, leading to plenty of warm sunshine for most, but there is a risk of heavy showers on the cards, particularly across Northern Ireland. But we still find ourselves with high pressure to the north of the country, bringing largely settled conditions, but at time a northeasterly flow, just making things feel a little bit cooler around any eastern coasts. But any low cloud burning back to eastern coastal areas, leaving wall-to-wall blue skies for many areas, though the risk of showers, particularly across southern Scotland, northern England, parts of Wales, the odd isolated shower may pop up, but the main risk is across Northern Ireland, where we could see some heavy showers, possibly even the odd rumble of thunder. But for most, it should be a dry day, plenty of warm sunshine, highs reaching around the low 20s. To finish off the day then, across Scotland, mostly dry, though we'll start to see a return of some low cloud across the far northeast through the course of the evening. Still some showers lingering on across parts of Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, still the heaviest of showers across parts of Northern Ireland. And across England and Wales, yes, still the odd isolated shower, but for most it should be a dry end to the day. And remaining mostly dry for the first part of the evening, any showers eventually easing away across Northern Ireland. Then it's all eyes to the south and southwest, further cloud pushing through here, and then also some outbreaks of showery rain as we head towards dawn. So a very different start to the day across parts of the south, but elsewhere, Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a dry, clear night, which means it just might feel that little bit chillier. But across central and southern areas as we head into tomorrow, a very different day ahead, more cloud, outbreaks of rain, eventually easing their way southwards. But then across central areas, further showers bubbling up. Once again, these could be heavy at times, but a much drier day ahead across Northern Ireland, Scotland, northern parts of England. Still plenty of warm sunshine, though feeling a little bit cooler across the south.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. A broken down vehicle partially blocks the M90 northbound between junction 6 and 7. Motorists should proceed cautiously and anticipate delays. The M4 westbound from junction 46 Llangefferlac to 47 Penlagar is disrupted due to electrical work. Entry and exit slip roads are closed with diversions in place. In Wiltshire, a police incident closes all lanes on the M4 eastbound exit slip at junction 17, with normal conditions expected this evening. And on the trains, major disruptions continue for Avanti West Coast and London North Western Railway services between Stafford and Nuneaton. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. It's nearly 1:45 and we're going to stick with issues closer to home now. We're joined by GB News reporter Anna Riley to bring us up to date with the story on fishing, of course, big part of the EU reset deal yesterday. What's the reaction been, Anna?
Good afternoon. Well, we're here in North Shields, up in the northeast. It's England's largest port for prawns, so predominantly shellfish that's caught here. Speaking to some fishermen and the person that actually runs the quay here, they've said potentially could there be a benefit for them with this red tape being cut to the EU, as predominant exports of shellfish go to the European Union. We also touched on the £360 million investment that the government's making into fishing, also to help support coastal communities like this one. So people here trying to look at the positives in terms of the shellfish end, but yesterday when I was in Scarborough, there was certainly a lot of anger with fishermen there. They also catch shellfish, but also go out to Peterhead and go out to as far as Norway as well to catch the whitefish, and they certainly felt angry. They felt initially betrayed by Brexit. They thought that this deal would be better for them to get rights back to our waters, and now hearing that it's 12 years that the EU, predominantly Spanish fleets and French fleets, can have access to our waters, frustrated them. They felt like it could be a dying industry. It's a heritage industry as well. People come to places like this to obviously buy fish and sell fish, but also because of the heritage that the fishing industry brings. So mixed opinions here, people looking out for the potential positives, but still a lot of anger and still feeling sold out by the government.
OK, well, Anna Riley, live from North Shields, thanks indeed for bringing that all to us. Now, of course, if you're a fisherman, you might want to check the weather forecast if you're going to go and travel around, particularly in the North Sea, or maybe you want to check the weather forecast across the European continent.
Well, we know it's nice in Gibraltar.
We certainly do. But
what about other destinations?
Well, let's have a look.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Heavy showers for central and northern Italy and Croatia over the next few days. Generally sunny over the Greek islands. Plenty of sunshine for Iberia at the moment, but we are looking at more wet weather, especially for northern Spain and the Balearics come the end of the week. There are those showers over Italy, some pretty heavy downpours over parts of the Balkans. Will continue with the risk of showers here through the week. Sunny skies for most of the Greek islands, certainly for Cyprus and much of Turkey as well. Santorini stays sunny for the rest of the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Eve, very good morning. You commentate on this. This is your subject. What do you think? Why is this happening? Because we're sitting now. I'm at a stage now where all my kids are growing up, whatever. I don't have to face this thing anymore. But I'm suddenly stopping and going, what What am I paying this for? Why are we paying this? Why is this going to 750 schools and not all schools?
So this is a pilot run by the Department for Education to look at how this programme can work. It was a manifesto commitment from the Labour Party at the last election, and they're very keen to roll this out nationally, but they're doing this pilot for a short period until July to see how they can do this effectively to ensure that it meets the most children. So really, that's a kind of sensible way of rolling out what is quite a big programme.
Yes, it's important to do the pilots and study it and see who it helps and who it doesn't, and how expensive it could be if it's rolled out
getting the money
nationally.
to pay for this?
Well, exactly. What do they say about that, Eve? I mean, where are they going to get the money to pay for it?
So they've committed to 30 million towards it. To be honest, we're in a situation as a country where 1/4 of primary school teachers are saying that they regularly spend their own money on feeding kids. That cannot be right. We know that we've got a child poverty problem in this country, and I think it's a reasonably good use of taxpayers' money to be spending it on ensuring that children go to school and they are fed and able to learn.
Well, I just look and I think the basic primary parental responsibility is to look after your children, to feed your children. And I sit and scratch my head and say, of all the things that we can do as parents, all the things we can spend money on, are you telling me that you can't give your kid a bit of toast and a cup of tea in the morning?
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 11 minutes to 2, and could it be meltdown mode for the Conservative Party? Well, a major new poll shows them slipping to 4th place behind even the Liberal Democrats.
Well, with the Reform Party on the rise and questions swirling around the leadership of Kemi Badenoch, insiders are now panicking. Could this be one nail in the coffin for the Conservative Party?
Well, this is an interesting story for neutral observers. But one of the reports I've seen this morning is this is the first time the Conservatives have slipped to 4th in the polls for 6 years. Because, of course, in 2019, around the Euro elections, which I believe were in June, so before the...
Well, it might have been in May.
May, OK, but before... They were post the... local elections, I remember that. It was separate. And then there were the Euro elections.
So Brexit was supposed to happen on the 29th of March 2019. And there were 3 meaningful votes in the House of Commons. All of them failed in what were some of the largest defeats for any government in the history of the House of Commons. At which point, Theresa May then had to go to the European Union and be granted a humiliating extension beyond that leaving date. And then, you know, years after the referendum, we had to do European elections that were just 2 weeks after the local elections.
Exactly. So this was June, and I remember at the time many very loyal Conservative members and volunteers refused to campaign in those elections because we should have left the EU. So we had these elections, which of course the Brexit Party, so Nigel Farage's previous party, won. They came top in the country, the first time they'd topped a national poll, and the Conservatives came 4th. Now, obviously that was terrible.
Conservatives came 5th.
Oh, 5th.
The Conservatives came 5th behind the Green Party, as well as the Lib Dems, the Labour Party and the Reform Party.
But all that the Conservatives had to do at the time to regain popularity was change leader and get Brexit done, which of course was done. Arguments, you know, could be an argument, but was done under Boris Johnson. But I don't think it's going to be that simple this time. It's entirely different circumstances. This is not really about one particular policy that's gone wrong.
Well, this is the thing. There was a clear, easy way for the Conservative Party to usurp the Brexit Party, and that was to have a really clear position on Brexit, to expel, as Boris Johnson did, 31 MPs who voted against him on the profound issue of who controls the order papers paper in Parliament, handing that over to Jeremy Corbyn, in effect, was seen to be such a betrayal of the values of what the Conservatives stood for, that those people were actually expelled. It was big issues like that Boris Johnson sort of pushed forward that convinced the Brexit Party voters that actually they were safe with the Conservatives to deliver that election victory. But I suppose the big question mark is, what on earth can the Conservative Party do from a position of opposition that can provide the same sort of impetus to those voters who are actually fed up of the Conservative Party and its promises? They have seen a party that, in their view, has reneged on promise after promise after promise. And it's hard to see how the Conservative Party can do anything to actually deliver on what it says, because they're powerless. They're in opposition.
And the psychological impact as well in a two-party, well, it's not really a two-party system anymore, is it? But in first past the post, when a party is relatively low in the polls, 15, 16, 17%, it will not be favoured by tactical voting. But once you break through that 25, 26, suddenly in seats that are, let's say there's a seat where people want to kick the Labour Party out the next election, they're going to now be thinking, well, actually, I'll vote for reform to kick Labour out, and the Conservatives are then losing out psychologically from the loss in the poll. And
of course, this is what the Labour Party want, because the Labour Party wants the sort of anti-Nigel Farage vote to be coalescing around Keir Starmer. Even though no one loves Keir Starmer, we saw that in the last election, people voted for him as the option that was not the others. That's what, and it seems, according to reports, Keir Starmer has demanded that he does a one-on-one debate with Nigel Farage.
That would be fun to watch. People are saying this is the end of the two-party system. I don't think it is. I just think it's the replacement of one party with another, potentially. Like 100 years ago, the Labour and the Liberals.
Yes, well, so much to think on there, but do stick with us. And, of course, don't forget that you can stay with us all day, not just on your television, but on your radio and, indeed, your smart speaker too. Very 21st century. So to listen to us on your smart speaker, just say Play GB News on TuneIn. That's Play GB News on TuneIn. And while you do that, here's a quick advert break. We'll be back in just a tick.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. A cloudier day tomorrow with some outbreaks of showers, but towards the north, still plenty of warm sunshine to come. And the reason it's been so settled is because we've got high pressure situated to the north of the country, and because of this we drag in a northeasterly flow, particularly across the north as we head through into the overnight period. So some low cloud at times here. Otherwise, any showers across Northern Ireland eventually easing away. Then it's all eyes to the south. There's some thicker areas of cloud moving through here. Also some outbreaks of showery rains. Quite a damp start across southern parts as we head through into Wednesday morning. But across Northern Ireland, Scotland, northern parts of England, a dry night, plenty of clear skies where temperatures will slip away. That's away from the low cloud in the northeast. So outbreaks of rain towards southern parts first thing into Wednesday. This could be heavy at times, eventually easing away later through into the morning. But for Northern Ireland, a much drier start, plenty of clear skies here, and fairly similar across Scotland, though still some lingering low cloud towards the northeast. Quite breezy here at times too, but through the course of the morning, this low cloud eventually lifting and breaking, moving towards coasts. But it's really across the southern parts of England and Wales where we're going to see a slightly different story. More clouds, showers, eventually easing away as it sinks its way southwards, but even by the afternoon we could see some showers bubble up, particularly across central areas, and the odd one or two could be heavy. But across Northern Ireland, a much drier day ahead, and similar across Scotland, northern parts of England. So feeling warmer here, warm in the sunshine, highs of 22 degrees Celsius, but across the south, a cooler day to come. Now, through the course of the evening, still some showers, some outbreaks of rain, but eventually clearing away, leading to a largely dry night, but still a return of the low cloud across the east. And it should be a mostly dry end to the week, but from Saturday, the beginning of the bank holiday, more rain moving in from the west.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
What does it feel like to be a Great British Giveaway winner?
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God,
I'm going to cry.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh, my God. This is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
Yes, that is fantastic.
You know, you have no idea how much I needed it. Oh, my goodness. That's wonderful. Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I was gobsmacked. Thank you, GBNews.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it. Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
You really could be our next big winner. Head over to gbnews.com/win now to find out how and get your entry for the Great British Giveaway. Great prizes, even greater wins.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the 20th of May. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Miriam Cates.
Drive down bills with increased cooperation on energy, because the agreement negotiated by the party opposite left us with a more expensive way of working with our neighbours.
Well, Brexit deal or Brexit drift? The Prime Minister's EU reset sparks a fierce political row, with big questions over sovereignty and economic control. We'll be discussing his statement in the Commons.
And Northampton childminder Lucy Connolly has lost her appeal to cut a 31-month jail sentence for inciting racial hatred online. We'll have the latest reaction.
Elsewhere, a prolific people smuggler has been jailed after helping more than 3,000 others into Europe in just 3 weeks after he arrived in the UK on a small boat. We'll bring you the very latest.
Could slimming jabs help shrink Britain's benefits bill? Well, Tony Blair's think tank is backing a bold plan to post weight loss injections to millions, aiming to ease NHS pressure and lift the economy. We'll debate that.
I'm a big fan of these fat jabs.
I don't think you've used them yourself, though, Tom.
No, I don't. I don't use them. I've been very lucky. I don't need to use them.
The Jammy Dodger diet does you well.
Yeah, that's all I eat. 1 packet of Jammy Dodgers per day, and that serves me. No, but I do know lots of people do struggle with their weight. And I think what these jabs have proven, really, is that some people have a different sort of physiology to others. I mean, some people find it a lot easier to control what they eat than other people do. And if these jabs help the people that find it much, much harder to control hunger, frankly, because they suppress people's hunger, well, that's only a good thing.
And there have been some interesting results in controlling addictions as well. People who tend to drink too much alcohol saying that their cravings reduced. I've got mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, obesity is one of the biggest crises facing this country, and if it can help that and help people back into work, help people exercise, all those kind of things, that's a good thing. But we don't know the long-term results. We don't have enough data on that. And also, there is a link between self-control over what you eat and how much exercise you do, and self-control over, your work, all these other things. And I just do wonder if taking the easy option is actually the best thing for people in the end. But maybe it's a kind of start. And the other thing is, people report when they come off the jabs, because you don't want them to be on them forever, they have some side effects, they rapidly put the weight back on.
Well, yeah, some do, some don't. I mean, it's about building habits, isn't it? But
does it build a habit if what it does is suppress your hunger, which suddenly returns if you come off the drug?
Well, I don't know. If you were eating 5 meals a day and you go down to eating 3 meals a day, you have your smaller portion sizes, that sort of muscle memory. I'm not sure. I'm not an expert in that field, but I do know that I do know a few people who do take these injections. Whose lives have just become so much nicer. Yeah. So much better. And actually, it's not just that they do nothing and have these injections. They've actually started doing exercise and do other things, because then it's easy. Once you're a bit slimmer, you feel perhaps less self-conscious about going to the gym or like all these other things.
And it's just easier. You're carrying less weight. Yeah. And also, people get to a certain age and your metabolism slows down, and it is just much harder to shift the extra weight. So maybe it's a boost. Well, let us know what you think. We are going to be debating it, but let us know your views on gbnews.com/your say. But first of all, we've got the news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom at 3 minutes past 2. Well, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, said today his new EU deal shows Britain is back on the world stage, and claimed it brings an unprecedented level of access to EU markets and boosts UK security. He also pointed to recent trade deals with India and the United States as, he says, proof the UK is turning a corner. But backlash is growing over a 12-year extension for EU fishing in UK waters. And Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch called it a total capitulation, and called it a stitch-up too, to chase headlines accusing Sir Keir Starmer of selling out our sovereignty. Well, speaking to us earlier on GB News, Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Priti Patel claims the Labour government has betrayed Brexit and betrayed Britain.
Keir Starmer never believed in Brexit. He spent all his time campaigning to unpick Brexit. He was being dishonest with the British public. He basically did not go into the general election last year and say that his reset would mean that we'd become a rule taker all over again and under the European Court of Justice, which is effectively what has happened. He deceived the British public. He never said that we'd end up paying the EU, and that's what we are doing again.
A UK-based people smuggler who ran a £12 million illegal boat crossing operation has been jailed for 25 years today. 42-year-old Ahmed Abid helped move nearly 3,800 migrants from North Africa to Italy, some of them ending up in Britain while living in southwest London. He even told an associate to kill any migrants caught with phones to avoid law enforcement. Abid is believed to be the first UK-based organiser of Mediterranean boat crossings and admitted conspiracy to assist unlawful immigration. A judge called the profits he made truly staggering and said Abid ruthlessly exploited the hard-earned savings of desperate individuals. The wife of a former Conservative councillor has lost her bid to cut her jail sentence for an online rant about migrants she posted on the day of the Southport attacks. Lucy Connolly was jailed for 31 months after calling for asylum hotels to be, quote, set on fire in a post that was viewed over 300,000 times before being deleted. She claimed in court she was grieving and never meant to incite violence, but judges rejected her appeal. They said her version of events didn't justify reducing the sentence. Tommy Robinson is due to be released from prison within a week after his 18-month sentence for contempt of court was cut by 4 months. He was jailed last year for breaching an injunction that barred him from repeating false claims about a refugee who had successfully sued him for libel. At a High Court hearing this morning, lawyers argued Robinson had shown a commitment to comply with the order. And while the judge said there was no contrition or remorse, he accepted Robinson had shown a change in attitude. Robinson, real name Stephen Yaxley Lennon, attended that hearing today via video link from HMP Woodhill. A second man has appeared in court over firebomb attacks on properties linked to the Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. The 26-year-old Stanislav Karpic was arrested at Luton Airport and is charged with conspiring to cause damage by fire alongside another Ukrainian man. Well, those attacks targeted homes in Islington and in Kentish Town, including one that Sir Keir Starmer lived in before becoming Prime Minister. You're up to date just after 2 o'clock. Let's hand you straight back now to Tom and Miriam.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 7 minutes past 2, we're taking you live to the United States, where we can see United States President Donald Trump appearing just before his address to Congress. Well, he's standing next to the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and clearly it's a big time in the United States. Trump had a phone call with President Vladimir Putin of Russia yesterday, where he's... let's listen in.
You can't be a guy like me and have a one majority. You have to be a guy like him, a nice person. He's very religious. He prays. He's a man of God, and so am I. But he's really to a new level, I will tell you. He is a great guy. They love him.
If the independent arbitration needs reference on a point of law, it's referred to the ECJ, which then refers it back to the independent arbitrator to make...
Look at what he got passed, what he's gotten passed. And just so you understand, he's gotten this passed too. And I don't think there's anybody I could give you guys that is so tough you guys would run if you ever looked at them. If you ever saw some of these guys, you would not ask them questions you'd be afraid to. This guy did something that I don't think there's anybody that's more well-suited to be Speaker of the House, especially under a case like this. Remember, we had a majority of 1 for 6 months, and that was a very frightening thing because the Democrats have really hurt our country. And we are going to go into very much, remember what I said, the auto pen. This government was illegally run for 4 years. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Member of Congress.
Well, there was Donald Trump and Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, who is a very religious man. Donald Trump was making reference to that, but also praising his deft ability to command a majority in Congress when the Republicans actually have a very small, very slim majority in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, I mean, it does... the juxtaposition of Trump with the Biden administration before, where Trump's happy to talk to journalists, to ad-lib any time, complete open access, and of course by the end of Biden's term in office, no questions were taken, no press conferences were done. It is, whatever you think of Trump, he does not mind talking to journalists.
It does really seem quite ad hoc on occasion.
Yes.
I wasn't certainly expecting Donald Trump to just, clearly walking through the Houses of Congress there and just stopped by the journalists. Why not? Have a chat.
Great. Very sociable. Well, back to UK politics now, and Sir Keir Starmer has been accused of trying to drag Britain back into the European Union under his reset deal with Brussels.
Well, the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, says that this deal is for the EU rather than the UK and is a stitch-up for Britain.
The terms are improved for the EU. And the Prime Minister can dress it up as much as he wants, but he has failed. It is bad for bills, it is bad for jobs, and it is bad for borders. This is not a deal made for Britain. This is a deal made for Labour's PR to show them on the world stage. But it is a stitch-up for our country for their short-term headlines.
Kemi Badenoch there. Well, joining us now is the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden. Pat, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Now, we've all been following this coverage of the reset deal, but Brexiteers, people who voted to leave the EU, are quite concerned today because it does seem like we've lost some of the control that we voted to regain, particularly in the single market for agri-food. We've now got to take EU law, despite not being at the table to make it. Do you think we have surrendered control of our laws today?
Let me take head on this question of rule taking and signing up to EU laws and so on. We've had 5 years now since the withdrawal agreement came into force, and there has been no divergence on the issues of animal welfare and agri-foods, because neither our farmers nor our citizens want a race to the bottom when it comes to these rules. So what the opponents of the deal on those grounds are saying is not even that they really want to water down our animal welfare or agri-food
there have been
laws.
changes.
What they're saying, no, let me continue. This is really, important. Please let me continue. No, please let me continue. Can I just continue this point?
There has been divergence.
There has been no meaningful divergence on agri-food laws at all, and it's really important with regard to this rule taker point, because what the opponents of the deal are saying is not really that they're arguing for a race to the bottom on animal welfare. They're saying we would like to accept all the bureaucracy, all the costs, all the extra form filling, all the delays for the theoretical right to diverge, even though we don't really want to exercise it. Now, that is a bad deal for farmers, it's a bad deal for British consumers, and that's why aligning in this way doesn't actually cost us anything. What we're doing is actually, if you like, solidifying what the practice has been for the last 5 years in the first place.
Under the previous government, when it comes to animal welfare, agri-food and particularly food technology, there were two pieces of legislation that were passed that were impossible within the single market but became possible outside of the single market. One of them was the ban on the live export of animals, legal in the EU single market, now post-Brexit illegal in the United Kingdom market. And the second one was the Genetic Technologies Act. Now, this allows for GMOs, sort of gene-edited crops that are more resistant to disease or to drought, that farmers can choose to use on British soil now, that are actually illegal in the EU thanks to their precautionary principle. Now, if we are to sign up to all EU laws in the future, would we not then have to repeal the Genetic Technologies Act, and particularly with regard to lab-grown meat or gene-edited crops, these are now to be regulated by Brussels, not Westminster?
Well, there's a lot in there. No, we wouldn't have to repeal things. There is a provision in this for exceptions, so it's not 100%. And the critical judgment will be what affects imports and exports. And the great prize that we got yesterday, which is why it's been so warmly welcomed by food producers and food exporters, is that we can get rid of the thousands of pounds of form filling and delays and all the things that have been getting in the way of exports, which is why our goods exports have dropped 21% and imports have dropped 7% since Brexit. And we've done all this without having to rerun the Brexit debate, without having to go through all the pain that we went through as a country in all those years of division. And the question of the deal overall, in all its aspects, is does it leave us in a better position today than, or a better position in the future than we are today? And the answer to that is unquestionably yes. And the question for those who say they want to tear it up is, are they now going to go to the farmers, go to the travellers, go to the food retailers and say, we would rather you had all the costs and bureaucracy that this deal can get rid of, and we're going to reinstate it all after the next election? That's the position they're now in, by virtue of not taking a breath, but coming out against this deal so hard and fast over the last 24 hours. I understand that oppositions can make mistakes. They've made a big mistake in doing that and making such a judgment to tear up this deal.
Very quickly on that specific point, are you saying that actually under this deal, despite accepting EU rules, the UK government will still be able to allow gene-edited crops in this country? Is that a commitment from this government?
Well, I see nothing in the deal that means we have to go back on current legislation. What we're talking about is making sure we have common rules when it comes to the import and export of food. and that is in the interests of our consumers, it's in the interests of our producers, and as you've seen from the welcome from Morrison's, from Marks and Spencer's, from the National Farmers Union, from the Scottish Salmon Producers, even the Guide Dogs Association has come out in favour of this deal over the last 24 hours. The only people locked against it are people, I think, who are a bit trapped in the old Brexit debate, and they've come out with an instinctive reaction to tear up the deal. And as I say, it's left them with quite a problem, because they're now going to have to go to all those groups that I just mentioned and say they'd like to reinstate the costs and bureaucracy and the delays as a matter of their principles. I don't think people are going to take very kindly to being told they have to pay those costs and put up with those delays because some politicians in the Tory party in Reform don't like a deal which is much better for Britain and comes on top of two other good deals that we've negotiated with the United States and with India in recent weeks.
Pat McFadden, thank you so much for joining us. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for.
It's a shame. There's so much more we could have spoken about.
Absolutely, including those trade deals and whether or not the EU reset actually jeopardises future deals with the US. That will be interesting to see.
Absolutely. But in other news, Lucy Connolly has failed in her appeal against her sentence for inciting racial hatred.
Yes, she is the wife of a former Conservative councillor, and she was jailed for 31 months last October after calling for mass deportations and for migrant hotels to be burnt down in the wake of the Southport attacks last summer, when 3 girls were tragically murdered at a Taylor Swift-themed dance lesson.
Well, let's go live to the Royal Courts of Justice and speak to our reporter, Adam Cherry. Adam, what happened today?
Well, today we heard from Lord Justice Holroyd. In his judgment, he said there is no arguable basis on which it could be said that the sentence imposed by the judge was manifestly excessive. The application for leave to appeal against sentence therefore fails and is refused. Now, in the last couple of hours, we've also heard from Downing Street on this case. Number 10 said they can't comment on individual cases, but the spokesman added the government is committed to freedom of speech, but anyone who posts illegal content will be met with the law. An extraordinary case. Lucy Connolly will remain behind bars, and of course it comes at the time that the government announced in the last week they plan to release more criminals early because the prisons are full. And just an extraordinary set of circumstances here today, Tom.
Indeed. Well, Adam Cherry, thanks indeed for being there for us.
Well, time is now running out on your chance to win our Great British giveaway. We are offering a brand new motorhome worth over £67,000. And now that Tom has his driving licence, he could enjoy a motorhome holiday. Fancy something like that, Tom?
I certainly could, although I'm not sure
I'm
not
allowed to enter. Sorry to break it to you.
Which is, I suppose, for everyone at home, there's one greater chance that you will win it because I'm
because
not allowed to
absolutely.
enter it.
Well, you never know. You're looking for a vehicle, maybe a motorhome, very versatile. But also, you could win £5,000 in tax-free cash to spend how you like. Don't miss out. Here's how to enter.
It's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to win. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be spending your summer touring in this stylish Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. Worth over £67,000. This brand new 2025 model comes complete with kitchen and bathroom areas and enough space to comfortably sleep a family of 4. We'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to add a few of your favourite things, or just spend it however you like. Don't miss out as lines close on the 6th of June. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We have lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, could slimming jabs help shrink Britain's benefits bill? That's what Tony Blair's think tank is saying. They're backing a bold plan to post weight loss injections, or even weight loss injections, to millions, aiming to ease pressure on the NHS. But is it an effective use of money? And indeed, should millions of people be on these jabs? We'll have that debate.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Now, part of a Soviet-era spacecraft stranded in orbit for more than 50 years will crash back to Earth today.
Yes, Cosmos 482 launched in 1972 on a mission to Venus, but it failed to escape Earth's orbit and broke into 4 pieces.
Well, now experts are closely monitoring its re-entry, but where it will land remains a mystery.
It was due to land in, what is it, about 40 minutes now?
Yeah,
not long to go till we find out. Well, earlier we spoke to space expert Andy Land. He told us what makes this spacecraft different to the others we've seen previously.
Currently, it's over the South Pacific, so it's heading towards South America. The odds are really unlikely. The chances are it's going to crash into the ocean, to be quite honest. Other parts of this fell into the Pacific Ocean, although in the early days when it got into the wrong orbit, of course, the lower sections of it actually crashed into New Zealand and landed in a field. But no, I think you got more chance of being struck by lightning or winning the lottery than actually being hit by a piece of this material. The only interesting thing about this mission, of course, it is a Venus atmospheric entry probe, which means it's designed to survive entry through a dense atmosphere. And in particular case, Venus's atmosphere is more dense than the Earth's atmosphere. It's designed to withstand fantastic temperatures, absolutely fantastic temperatures, huge pressures. So this piece will hit the ground or hit into the ocean. That's what makes this a very different creature from previous satellites which have broken up, which normally they just break up into pieces. This is designed to actually come back. And in case people think, well, wouldn't the parachute system operate? It's unlikely the parachute system is operating at all after half a century. So it's going to be a ballistic drop.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 2:25 and these fat jabs are very interesting, aren't they, Tom? I mean, obviously they were designed for people who are morbidly obese and really need to lose weight in order to rapidly improve their health. But lots of people are using them who are just half a stone overweight.
Yeah, lots of people who are sort of mildly obese, but is it making their lives better? And if they're, shouldn't they be the judge of that? I don't know.
Well, it depends who's paying for it, of course, as well.
That's also true, but is it a miracle fix or just cheating? Well, Tony Blair's calling for 15 million Brits, potentially, to get these weight loss jabs by post without a GP needed.
Well, supporters say that it could save lives and billions of pounds, but critics claim it's a shortcut that dodges real change. So, are fat jabs the future of health or just an easy way out?
Well, joining us to debate this is the functional hormone nutritionist Pippa Campbell, who is against these fat jabs, and the author Lisa McKenzie, who says they've really helped her and for her overall health. So let's start with Pippa Campbell then. Pippa, why are you against these?
Well, I've been helping women lose weight for 16 years. And look, when a woman is overweight, it affects their whole life. They lose confidence. They don't want to go on holiday. They don't want to get into that bikini. It affects their marriage. They might not go for a new job. So helping a woman lose weight is really going to help them gain confidence in their life and, of course, reduce any other health risks. However, I'm about long-term sustainable weight loss. And I'm not saying completely no, never to do these weight loss jabs. But I think we are ignoring the fact that it's not a cure-all, that there can be other factors at play as well. And we do need to focus on diet. So these weight loss jabs, they are working on reducing appetite. They work on the appetite center in the brain, and people want to eat less, reduces gastric emptying, so they feel full. Now, of course, what we're seeing in clinic is many women on these weight loss jabs, and we see the side effects. So they are suffering with nausea, gas, bloating, constipation, or diarrhea. And they can't digest fats as well, because that food is just sitting in their stomach and it just feels like a big brick. So all of this affects digestion and can lead to other problems like gallbladder problems because they're not digesting their fats very well. Now, as I said, it's not a cure-all. So long-term, it's not going to be the complete answer. And it may work for people, as I said, who need to work on appetite control. But what about for women over the age of 40 who have low thyroid, who are in perimenopause? And there's another root cause to this.
Lisa, let's bring you in. How do you respond to this? Should these only be used in really, really difficult cases?
Well, no, I think, you know, it is something that's been proven that it works and it helps overall weight loss. It has helped me. I've been on it for about 6 months. I've not had lots and lots of side effects, to be honest. Sometimes you do get a bit of nausea, but it's not been too bad. And I've lost weight very, very slowly over the time. The reason it's helped me is because I've got an underactive thyroid, so that means it's very difficult. It has been difficult for me to lose weight. And I've also got fibromyalgia, which means I've got a lot of pain in my joints. So the doctor said to me, you know, perhaps you should lose some weight, about 10% of your body weight would be good. And because I've got other health issues, it's been very difficult to do that. So what I decided to do is go to a private clinic and go on to this. And it has helped. It's not been a miracle cure. I agree with you know the other guest. It's not been miracle because I've been losing it very slowly. But it has helped me probably be more active at the gym. You know, my pain is sort of lessening. So I do think that if there is something out there that's going to help us, and do I think that women who's half a stone overweight should take it? No, I don't. But do I think that it should be there for people with health risks? You know, it helps, you know, fight off diabetes. You know, you don't get type 2 diabetes if you don't put the weight on. So I think it's useful and it's there. So why not? You know, we fund lots and lots of drugs on the NHS. I'm not sure why this one is so contentious.
Pippa, what do you say to that? Of course, Tony Blair's think tank is saying that perhaps 15 million Brits could get these by post. And surely it's the case that if someone's experiencing lots of side effects, they can simply stop having the injections. And if it's working, they can continue.
Yeah, so what we've talked about just now, actually, it was interesting talking about your low thyroid. So I presume that you are having that monitored, your thyroid markers as well, while you're taking the weight loss jab. Because what I've seen in clinic is actually long-term use of the weight loss jabs can actually suppress thyroid even more because we produce these hormones that help us lose weight. They boost metabolism, these thyroid hormones. And if you don't support the thyroid, and we need key nutrients actually to support thyroid function, and if people are eating a lot less food, my concern is they're not eating enough of the nutrients to support thyroid. So is it that sometimes we might be missing a key component, that maybe it's someone's thyroid that needs the attention rather than acting on GLP-1? So my point is that, are we missing the full picture? That actually these injections are only just a really small piece of the weight loss puzzle. And what about it if a woman is, you know, they are overweight because of low thyroid function? I've seen women with low thyroid function starving themselves and they still can't lose weight, because if the thyroid isn't working well, they just can't lose weight. It doesn't matter what they eat. So is it that they've got low thyroid? Is it that they're perhaps estrogen dominant? Or there's another
Let's bring Lisa in
factor?
because you started, Pippa. We're running out of time, but Lisa, a final word to you.
I'm just saying, you know, and I know that when you've got multiple sort of illnesses and complications like I have, I think it's better that it goes to the NHS, because private clinics are there, you know, they are private and they're for money, you know, they're there for profit. Whereas if we had it on the NHS and you were seeing a doctor, and at the same time I'm getting my thyroid monitored, but if that was part of the NHS, I think that would be healthier and safer.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there, but a fascinating debate. Pippa Campbell, Lisa Mackenzie, thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure we'll be continuing to cover this because it is, it's a very interesting story, isn't it?
It does seem like they are an absolute profound technology of our time. It's one of the things that I think, 50 years we'll look back on sort of this time and sort of what do we remember from the early 2020s? Well, probably some of these drugs.
And obesity is one of the biggest threats to the nation's health, so perhaps it could be the answer.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and up next, the Labour Party is under pressure over its all-women shortlists. Well, the party is considering excluding trans women and has cancelled its women's conference over the issue. Well, is this a legal necessity or a betrayal of trans rights that the Labour Party stood on before the election? We'll dig into the fallout, but first, it's the news with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. Let's get you up to date then on all the top stories just after 2:30. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, says his new EU deal shows Britain is back on the world stage and claims it brings an unprecedented level of access to EU markets and boosts UK security. He's also pointed to recent trade deals with India and the United States, saying it's proof the UK is turning a corner. But backlash is growing over a 12-year extension for EU fishing in UK waters. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch has called it a total capitulation and a stitch-up to chase headlines and accused Sir Keir Starmer of selling out our sovereignty. The UK has hit Russia today with 100 new sanctions targeting weapons, oil, banks and so-called propaganda networks. Foreign Secretary David Lammy has called Vladimir Putin a warmonger and urged him to agree to an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine. New measures hit missile suppliers, 46 financial institutions and 14 members of a Kremlin-backed disinformation agency. 18 more ships in Russia's shadow fleet transporting oil have also been sanctioned. And the government says it may now lower the G7 oil price cap to slash Russian revenues even further. A UK-based people smuggler who ran a £12 million illegal boat crossing operation has been jailed today for 25 years. 42-year-old Ahmed Abid helped move nearly 3,800 migrants from North Africa to Italy, some of them ending up in Britain while he lived in southwest London. He even told an associate to kill any migrants that were caught with phones to avoid law enforcement. Abid is believed to be the first UK-based organiser of Mediterranean boat crossings and admitted conspiracy to assist unlawful immigration. A judge called the profits he made truly staggering and said that Abid ruthlessly exploited the hard-earned savings of desperate individuals. And the wife of a former Conservative councillor has lost her bid to cut her jail sentence for an online rant she made about migrants posted on the day of the Southport attacks. Lucy Connolly was jailed for 31 months after calling for asylum hotels to be, quote, set on fire in a post viewed over 300,000 times before being deleted. She claimed in court she was grieving and never meant to incite violence, but judges have rejected her appeal. They say her version of events didn't justify reducing the sentence. That's it from me for today. Katie Bowen will have a full roundup at 3 o'clock. Next, though, let's take a look at the markets.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Well, here's how the markets are shaping up this afternoon. The pound will buy you $1.3339 and 1.1880 euros. The price of gold is £2,427 and 6 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,764 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through this morning, any low cloud clearing away, leading to plenty of warm sunshine for most, but there is a risk of heavy showers on the cards, particularly across Northern Ireland. But we still find ourselves with high pressure to the north of the country, bringing largely settled conditions, but at time a northeasterly flow, just making things feel a little bit cooler around any eastern coasts. But any low cloud burning back to eastern coastal areas, leaving wall-to-wall blue skies for many areas, though the risk of showers, particularly across southern Scotland, northern England, parts of Wales, the odd isolated shower may pop up, but the main risk is across Northern Ireland, where we could see some heavy showers, possibly even the odd rumble of thunder. But for most, it should be a dry day, plenty of warm sunshine, highs reaching around the low 20s. To finish off the day then, across Scotland, mostly dry, though we'll start to see a return of some low cloud across the far northeast through the course of the evening. Still some showers lingering on across parts of Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, still the heaviest of showers across parts of Northern Ireland. And across England and Wales, yes, still the odd isolated shower, but for most it should be a dry end to the day. And remaining mostly dry for the first part of the evening, any showers eventually easing away across Northern Ireland. Then it's all eyes to the south and southwest, further cloud pushing through here, and then also some outbreaks of showery rain as we head towards dawn. So a very different start to the day across parts of the south, but elsewhere, Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a dry, clear night, which means it just might feel that little bit chillier. But across central and southern areas as we head into tomorrow, a very different day ahead, more cloud, outbreaks of rain, eventually easing their way southwards. But then across central areas, further showers bubbling up. Once again, these could be heavy at times, but a much drier day ahead across Northern Ireland, Scotland, northern parts of England. Still plenty of warm sunshine, though feeling a little bit cooler across the south.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the M90 northbound, a broken down vehicle blocks between junctions 6 and 7. Please exercise caution. The westbound entry and exit slip roads of the M4 at junction 46 in Llangefalac are closed for electrical work. Diversions are in place. In Oxfordshire, an incident on the A34 northbound near the A44 junction involves one-lane closure. In Kent, the M20 westbound exit slip at junction 10A has a broken-down vehicle affecting one lane. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast and London North Western Railway report major disruptions between Stafford and Nuneaton. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 39 minutes past 2. Now, the Labour Party is under fire again, and this time it's all women shortlists.
Well, the party's leadership is now considering policy changes that could exclude transgender women from all women's shortlists, and it's also cancelled its women's conference.
Well, the move's been sparked, it has sparked debate within the party and among advocacy groups. So is this all a necessary legal step in light of the Supreme Court ruling, or is this the Labour Party betraying the principles that it stood on before the election?
Well, joining us now here in the studio, we've got women's rights campaigner Venice Allen. Venice, welcome. What's your reaction to this? We should say leaked at the moment news that Labour may ban trans women, so males, from the all-women shortlists.
Yes, it's just a leak, so we don't know the actual truth of it. But I think it's good news that Labour are taking this seriously. They're not like so many institutions waiting for the, what's it called again? The EHRC. Yeah, I always get confused with the European Court of Human Rights. They're not waiting for them to give new guidance because there is no need for guidance. The judgment was clear. A woman is an adult human female in law. So I think it's good that they've come out with this. Well, they haven't come out with it. They've leaked it. Somebody's leaked it. What's really disappointing is cancelling the women's conference.
And why have they done that?
Well, they're just... I was unclear. I had to phone some Labour Party friends to check that actually to attend this, you do have to be a woman. Whatever, however you're defining that. I didn't realise that just a normal bloke couldn't just go. I don't think this conference is actually very popular. It's just one of those things where, because it says woman on it, everyone wants ownership of it. I think in reality, it's the main conference, it's the main thing. But you know, somebody in Labour was saying, oh, you know, it's just that they've been so stupid, they should have prepared before the Supreme Court judgment. But my take is, well, what could they have done? What could they possibly have done? They can't win this with Labour Party members. You've got the women on one side and the feminists and the gay people who are very clear that we need a biological definition of man and woman. And then you've got the trans activists, which seem to hold so much power in the Labour Party and on the left in general. So what are they going to do? I think, although it's a big scandal to cancel this conference, if it went ahead, I don't think Labour want the public to see how awful these activists actually are.
Is this perhaps more of a problem for the Labour Party because the Labour Party has had, well, a lot of positive discrimination within its structures as an organisation? Because they are a party that has all women shortlists, unlike many other parties. Because they are a party that has a women's conference. I don't think the Conservative Party has a women's conference.
Have women's organisations, but
not a specific conference for women. And because they've got all of these aspects of positive legal discrimination, they're running into more problems with the Supreme Court ruling than other parties perhaps are.
Absolutely. I think the left in general has a problem with this. It's not just Labour that does these things. Actually, I don't think all women shortlists have really been used by the Labour Party recently because they already have the quota that they want. But yeah, when you play around with these identity Olympics, it gets quite tricky, doesn't it, when there's a clash of rights between different groups. I mean, the Liberal Democrats are just as bad, if not worse, actually, because at least Labour have come out saying that they're going to comply with the Supreme Court decision or judgment ruling. Whereas the Liberal Democrats, I mean, I think at one point, I think it was Christine Jardine, no, it was Baroness Brinton, actually was asked if, because they have a quota of 50-50, it's got to be men and women, and she was asked if all the 50% of women were trans women, would that be OK? And she said yes, because trans women are women. Wow. So I think, you know, the Liberal Voice for Women, which are a brilliant gender-critical organisation within the Lib Dems, they tried to get a motion at their conference to change this quota thing or something like that. And the whole party, including Ed Davey, voted to not hear the motion. So they didn't even want the debate.
There's still a lot of people just wanting to avoid the whole issue, really. But, Venice, thank you so much. I'm afraid we've run out of time. But Women's Rights campaigner, Venice Allen, thank you.
Now, if you're in search of some holiday sunshine, perhaps to escape all of these different legal rulings in the United Kingdom, here are the European weather forecasts.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Heavy showers for central and northern Italy and Croatia over the next few days. Generally sunny over the Greek islands. Plenty of sunshine for Iberia at the moment, but we are looking at more wet weather, especially for northern Spain and the Balearics come the end of the week. There are those showers over Italy, some pretty heavy downpours over parts of the Balkans. We'll continue with the risk of showers here through the week. Sunny skies for most of the Greek islands, certainly for Cyprus and much of Turkey as well. Santorini stays sunny for the rest of the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Welcome back. You're watching Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. After the break, we're back in sunny Gibraltar as it inches closer to joining the Schengen zone, that's the open border zone within the EU, keeping the border with Spain open. But what does that mean for UK control post-Brexit? We'll be unpacking the political pressure facing Keir Starmer.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 12 minutes to 3, and Gibraltar's Chief Minister has said that a deal between the UK and the EU on the ROC's post-Brexit status is within kissing distance.
Wow. Very fruity. Well, the deal would reportedly see Gibraltar join the open border Schengen zone across Europe and keep its border open with Spain.
Well, this comes just one day after the British government concluded its so-called reset deal with the EU.
Well, our man on the ground is Jack Carson in Gibraltar for us all day. And Jack, what's the reaction there on the ROC?
Well, there is a real mixed reaction and more concern because the details of this agreement haven't yet been made. We know that it is excruciatingly close, as you just said. That's what Fabian Picardo told us earlier on, but no real sense of what exactly the specific agreements are in that deal. And so we're left in this kind of situation where we're not sure, a lot of residents here not sure exactly what it looks like. You know, you can see this huge mooring anchor behind me, a reminder really of the rich naval history, you know, for hundreds of years here in Gibraltar. There's still, you know, armed forces based here, a Navy base, and also the RAF as well. We're just coming up to rush hour as well. You can probably see all the cars here in this traffic jam. So for Gibraltar, what they've told us is it's fluidity at the border. It's centred. It's not a return to freedom of movement. It's fluidity and agreement in fluidity, because people have told us there is sometimes antagonistic issues at the border, sometimes feeling, one person described it as almost bullying by some Spanish officials, and you don't get a consistent sense at the border going between Spain and Gibraltar. And when you've got 15,000 people coming from Spain into Gibraltar every day for work, that is where they feel this agreement is needed. But what are some of the concerns still that people have? We spoke to Max Castiel. He's a student here in Gibraltar earlier on.
I think it's essentially about maintaining our British identity and not giving up any sovereignty to Spain. As I said, I have faith in the government here, and I have faith in the people here, because I do not think they would settle for anything subpar. But obviously the technicalities of it, we're going to have to give up something, because it's not all, nothing's perfect. So, there are technicalities I'm sure we'll have to put up with, but essentially I think sovereignty, maintaining our British identity is the key thing here.
And it's those technicalities Max mentioned there that we still haven't got because this agreement, although excruciatingly close, has been still quite tight-lipped. Picardo told us in order to try and maintain that negotiation that we know has been happening between the European Commission and David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary. But we did speak to the Chief Minister here in Gibraltar. Here's what he said.
Well, I said yesterday to Gibraltar Television, we are excruciatingly close. We are almost there, but, you know, it's not over till the fat lady sings, and we're hoping that she's going to treat us to an opera very soon. Well, 15,000 people come into Gibraltar every day to work. That's half of the population of Gibraltar and half of the working population of Gibraltar. So 30,000 people work in Gibraltar. 15,000 of them have to come across that Schengen frontier every day and back into Schengen. So you can imagine if they had to do full passport formalities, it would take them longer than the working day to be able to come into Gibraltar. So we need an arrangement on fluidity, not freedom of movement, fluidity of people across that frontier into Gibraltar and out back into the European Union.
Now, as you heard there, interesting, he talked about the fluidity, making sure it's not freedom of movement but fluidity, but also the UK-EU Brexit reset deal that was done yesterday, according to Picardo, what he told us, will mean that the likes of British sausages and British produce will be able to make itself way back in to Gibraltar, but now that it can be brought through Spain and brought through the European into Gibraltar. A lot of supermarkets here, you know, Morrison's been one of the main supermarkets here in Gibraltar, not able to stock stuff like British sausages made in Britain. They are actually made in Spain in a British recipe, if you like, and then brought across the border here. So that would be a return in order to make supermarkets here feel more British. And that is the issue really around sovereignty as well. Whatever this deal is, it's ensuring the sovereignty is not lost. The people here back in the referendum in the 1960s voted overwhelmingly to still be recognised as a British overseas territory, to be recognised as British. People here fiercely patriotic, fiercely Gibraltarian, fiercely British at the same time. And so that is the concerns, to make sure that when this deal is announced on Gibraltar and this agreement is announced, that sovereignty is not lost here.
Yeah, big concerns there, no doubt. Jack Carson, thanks indeed for being there for us and getting that interview as well with the First Minister.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, this is the kind of periphery of Brexit that people didn't really consider at the time. Lots and lots of different individual deals that need to be worked out. Of course, the Gibraltarians desperately want to be part of the EU, but they also want to be British.
Absolutely. But also, of course, Spain are big hypocrites in terms of trying to grab that bit of Britain when they hold bits of Morocco.
Well, indeed.
Well, we must say that is all we've got time for today. But don't forget, you can stay with us all day here on GB News, not just on the television, but also on the radio and on your smart speaker. To listen to us on your smart speaker, just say Play GB News on TuneIn. That's Play GB News on TuneIn.
I do that quite a lot when I'm cooking at home. Have it on in the background. It's good fun. Well, don't go anywhere because Martin's up next. Martin, what's on the show today?
That's Guy's superb show. Well, not only was some people saying, is it the week that Brexit finally died? Is it the week that Kemi Badenoch's chances also perished along with it? An astonishing new poll has the Conservatives in fourth place, behind even the Liberal Democrats. Reform surging ahead, now being treated by the Labour Party as the main party of opposition. The Conservatives' polling hasn't been this bad since Theresa May lost to the Brexit Party in 2019. She resigned soon after. Will Kemi Badenoch go the same way, taken down by that man, Nigel Farage? That's on my show, 3 till 6. But first, here's your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. A cloudier day tomorrow with some outbreaks of showers, but towards the north, still plenty of warm sunshine to come. And the reason it's been so settled is because we've got high pressure situated to the north of the country, and because of this we drag in a northeasterly flow, particularly across the north as we head through into the overnight period. So some low cloud at times here. Otherwise, any showers across Northern Ireland eventually easing away. Then it's all eyes to the south. There's some thicker areas of cloud moving through here. Also some outbreaks of showery rains. Quite a damp start across southern parts as we head through into Wednesday morning. But across Northern Ireland, Scotland, northern parts of England, a dry night, plenty of clear skies where temperatures will slip away. That's away from the low cloud in the northeast. So outbreaks of rain towards southern parts first thing into Wednesday. This could be heavy at times, eventually easing away later through into the morning. But for Northern Ireland, a much drier start, plenty of clear skies here, and fairly similar across Scotland, though still some lingering low cloud towards the northeast. Quite breezy here at times too, but through the course of the morning, this low cloud eventually lifting and breaking, moving towards coasts. But it's really across the southern parts of England and Wales where we're going to see a slightly different story. More cloud showers, eventually easing away as it sinks its way southwards, but even by the afternoon we could see some showers bubble up, particularly across central areas, and the odd one or two could be heavy. But across Northern Ireland, a much drier day ahead, and similar across Scotland, northern parts of England. So feeling warmer here, warm in the sunshine, highs of 22 degrees Celsius, but across the south, a cooler day to come. Now, through the course of the evening, still some showers, some outbreaks of rain, but eventually clearing away, leading to a largely dry night, but still a return of the low cloud across the east. And it should be a mostly dry end to the week, but from Saturday, the beginning of the bank holiday, more rain moving in from the west.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Someone is going to win the biggest prize package to date, and that someone could be you. Driving away in this Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It has plenty of room for your family of four. Comes complete with kitchen, bathroom, and all the space you'll need for life on the road. Plus, we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message.